Hey, folks, today's program is sponsored in part by Cedar's Seeds. Yes, Cedar's Seeds. It's that time of year, folks. Time for you to get a plantin'. You can head over to Cedar's Seeds, one word, .com. You got to be at least 21 years of age to enter. And you can buy some seeds. We've got all sorts of different varieties. Shofar is our new one. Casual Friday.
Very nice.
We also have TG2 Maestro. We're going to have some pictures up in shortly, so you can check out some of the your fellow growers' grows. But it's super easy to grow your own plants. You just drop the seed in, you put a little soil, and you take care of it. And then there's a lot of other stuff you got to do. That's how I ended up, growing
Creating
seeds.
these seeds.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't realize you need to take the male and female plants away from each other, or everything turns into seeds. But I mean, my failure is your success. cedarseeds.com. And with the coupon code majority, you get 15% off. Now is the time to buy your seeds. You want to put them into your little planters in the next 3 to 4 weeks. If you're in zone 5, for instance, like where we are. But around the country, you could do it if it's warmer there. Get on it right now. All right, now time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Wednesday, March 6th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Dave Weigel, writer at Semafor, author of the Americana newsletter, on the Super Tuesday results, and looking forward to what other somewhat Super Tuesdays we'll have, or fun Tuesday. Joe Mizrahi, Secretary Treasurer of the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, Local 3000, the biggest union in Washington State, which came out last week, I think it was, with an endorsement for Uncommitted in the Washington State primary that's happening 1 week from yesterday. Also on the program today, Trump and Biden rack up Super Tuesday delegates. Nikki Haley takes Vermont and then takes a powder. She decides to leave the race.
Takes a walk off the plank.
There you are.
Eh.
And surprise, Mitch McConnell endorses Donald Trump. We'll talk about how ridiculous it is that's even being reported. Adam Schiff, likely to be the next senator from California, as both Lee and Porter not only failed to make the top 2 because of Steve Garvey and Adam Schiff's elevation of him, but they also will now no longer be in the House as of the next election because they had to step down because of California law. Meanwhile, speaking of California, AIPAC loses big in a California primary in Orange County. And a lunatic could be the next governor of North Carolina. Uncommitted wins a big win in Minnesota. All that we will cover. And the best part of Super Tuesday, Kristen Sinema announces she will not seek re-election. So that's a big win.
And you'll not have to get her name wrong ever again, because she's irrelevant.
Kristen, whatever. It's Thune versus Cornyn for Senate Majority Leader as Barroso opts for whip. We may see a vote on the House on the spending package to avert the first tranche of government shutdown supposedly happening in a couple days. That vote may come today. Leaked diplomatic U.S. cable says that an Israeli offensive on Rafah could result in catastrophic humanitarian consequences. SpaceX's attack on the National Labor Relations Board starts in earnest today as Trump meets with Elon Musk for money. And Menendez adds an obstruction charge to his bribery charge to fill out his complement of criminal charges. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. It is
Hump Day.
the day that made Emma Vigeland renowned.
Rich beyond my
So
wildest dreams. Yes.
So rich.
Yes. Rich in memories.
Golden Oyster Cult says Kristen Cinema is no match for Lynn, Liz, Lon Chaney.
Which one is it?
I literally have Kristen Cinema written on my thing.
Yeah. But it's Kirsten with a Y, I think. Kirsten. Which one is it? Is it Lynn, Liz, or Lon for Cheney? Not the mother, the congresswoman.
It's Liz. It's Liz.
Yeah. Good job.
All right. I did not say that with a tremendous amount of confidence, but I did say it.
You get to live now, so good job.
So there it is. Again, some of the most disappointing news came out of California last night, where Steve Garvey handily became the second vote getter in the jungle primary. It's unfortunate because there was a vote split between Porter and Lee. Now, it's quite possible that even if the Schiff had not sort of elevated Garvey, that maybe he would have come in second anyways. I mean, there was simply a vote split because you have multiple Democrats who are running and that are viable, and really there is no viability for the Republicans there. And so a guy who was, the former Dodgers first baseman, right? Was that what he played back in the day? Maybe he was a third baseman when he started. I can't remember. Yeah, he was first baseman. But nevertheless, Adam Schiff, I don't know that he'll be worse than Dianne Feinstein. So in that respect, okay, it would have been nice to have a really progressive senator from California, but that is where we're at. We'll talk a little more about Dave Weigel with that, but perhaps what was sort of like most impressive was the relentlessness of if not now activists confronting Adam Schiff on his support for the massacre that's happening in Gaza. This is really important. The more pressure that they see in the White House on other Democrats in other places, the more they will feel it, et cetera, et cetera. And this, they dogged Adam Schiff yesterday, and good for them. Takes a lot of guts to do stuff like this.
This man is sending your tax dollars to kill children in Gaza. How many more of your tax dollars are sending our tax dollars to Gaza? Free Palestine! Free Palestine! He's killing children with our tax dollars! Take my money!
That was earlier on,
yeah,
right?
What happened? Why did that? Can you let it play out a little more?
It's just 20 seconds.
Okay. But I think we just went 16 seconds there, but that's okay. Nevertheless, this is, I'll tell you why I think this is effective, as opposed to even like maybe, when you're in a big crowd like this, it is disturbing what they're trying to do in a way that is different than like, pursuing them individually. Like when you go and you disrupt a fundraiser, or when you go and you disrupt a party, when you go and disrupt, as we've seen with Biden, has canceled a lot of his college tours, they're feeling it. It is causing them. There is a political price that is associated with this.
And it's also just really brave. It's, if not now, it's Jewish Voice for Peace and other groups, we should say, that are organizing this in California. Like I saw, at the NBA All-Star game, there was a Let Gaza Live banner unfurled. People are going to get beers dumped on them. People, I mean, Jill Biden was getting interrupted by someone Jill Biden criticizing Biden's policies in Gaza. And she must have been, she was a young woman, and you see these older people just grabbing at her and being kind of violent. So it takes bravery on a number of levels. And
here is, so that was a campaign event earlier in the day. And here is Schiff with his victory speech. And
he didn't get to finish it.
Check it out.
One of the, I want to thank you all.
Someone came up and said to Adam Schiff, who was reading off a prompter, who was trying to stick to the prompter to wrap it up. He went and finished it up. These were people who came in, about 5 or 6 to start with, and said, ceasefire now, ceasefire now. Security ushered them out, and then another couple popped up, let Gaza live, let Gaza live, and then some more came in the middle. Security could not get them out, that they were scattered through the room here at the Avalon Theater and the nightclub. Go down there and pull down in the crowd for me, please. And you see that, there's just a lot of arguing, a lot of disagreement. Again, they were chanting, free Gaza now, let Gaza live, ceasefire now, let Gaza live, and the protesters remain here in the center of this floor. So what was supposed to be a victory celebration and a scripted speech that Adam Schiff was reading off prompter, one no doubt he had carefully crafted a long time ago, was cut dramatically short, and he was now taken off the stage.
Woo, great stuff.
Also, this has been a hallmark of these demonstrations too, how they stagger their disruptions. It's so effective because they can't get you all out at once, and they don't know when one member of the crowd is going to start chanting. This has been done, I think, at one of Biden's speeches, with the one in Virginia.
The Biden speech, the one in Virginia, is the one that I think precipitated his staff doing their best to not allow that type of disruption to happen again at any event.
Yes.
And also what happened in one of Tony Blinken's House committee hearings.
Right.
A lot of the
Virginia speech, Biden was interrupted 17 times.
Yeah, it was constant.
Yep. So good job, guys.
Yeah, really important. I mean, that is the there's no way that the White House isn't aware of this and realizes that this is going to be a problem. You see press reports that they're creeping ever so slightly to, pressuring Israel. They supposedly, Benny Gantz was in town, and supposedly they gave him an earful, all of which is, irrelevant until they actually start to put some muscle behind this. But we had Ken Klippenstein reporting on a leaked diplomatic cable. I mentioned that was basically coming from the American embassy in Israel, saying, and these are not people who are not sympathetic to Israel, I can tell you. Right. In the diplomatic corps, they're basically saying this is if they go into Rafah, it is going to be an unmitigated, in many respects, incomprehensible disaster. You have literally hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people living in tents there. Just horrible. But good for those folks who were out there protesting in what was really probably the most high-profile speech of the night.
Yeah.
And I mean, outside of maybe, I don't know if Trump gave one or not.
And he's going to be the senator from California, Schiff. That was why he spent, I think, over half of his money that he spent on advertising for Garvey. So this is the moment to say, we are your constituents too, buddy. And this is the future here in California.
All right. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Dave Weigel, a writer at Semafor, to get more on what we saw on Super Tuesday and where things are headed and what he's seeing out on the road. But first, a word from our sponsor. I got a lot of sleep last night, which doesn't happen a lot. I got a lot of sleep last night because I got all to bed early, and I was just like, I'm going to bed. And I think people can tell. I have a little more pep. I look better, and I have energy to spare. The list goes on when you get good sleep. Yet, if sleep is something that you have been neglecting and you need some help in that regard, Cozy Earth bedding may be the solution. Thanks to Cozy Earth for sponsoring this episode, and they are offering you up to 35% at CozyEarth.com. Enter Majority Report at checkout. Cozy Earth's luxury bedding is made with viscose, which is from bamboo. And so what it does, I mean, you say bamboo, you think like, oh my God, I don't want to sleep on bamboo. It is, it's incredibly soft. It also, the key for me is it's temperature regulating. I sleep very hot. And with other sheets I've found, it's like sleeping in a thermos. And it gets too hot. Cozy Earth, in addition to being very, very, soft sheets, it's temperature regulating. That's the part I like. It also happens to be sustainable because, bamboo grows like a weed. Cozy Earth was founded to transform lives by offering the softest, most luxurious, and responsibly sourced bedding in the world. Cozy Earth is the brand that made Oprah's favorite things 5 years in a row. I don't know that's not why I got them, but I mean, good for her.
Yeah.
Cozy Earth bedding, like I say, is ethically sourced. It uses a premium viscose from highly sustainable bamboo. In fact, sometimes it's hard to not get bamboo to grow. If you've ever planted bamboo in your front yard, you've made a mistake because it's going to be taking over the entire yard. It's also naturally temperature regulating and breathable, so you're going to sleep more comfortably all year round. And here's the deal. Cozy Earth bedding comes with a 100-night sleep trial, which means you have up to 100 nights to sleep on them. Wash them, obviously, please. Try them out. Do people go more than 100 days without washing their sheets?
That's not advisable. I will say that to you guys.
If you're not completely in love, you just return them within 100 days for a full refund. You can use them, wash them, whatever. And then if you decide that you don't love them, you return them. All of their products include a 10-year warranty against defects. Doesn't matter whether it's their luxury bedding, their ultra comfortable loungewear. I was going to say, like, I got a pair of joggers from them that are incredibly comfortable and also ones that I can wear outside.
Oh, nice. Yeah, right. Like, so they don't look like you're
don't look like I'm wearing my PJs. They have bath towels that are incredibly soft. You've got a, what do you call it? A duvet or a comforter or whatever.
I have that from Cozy Earth.
If you've never tried Cozy Earth, I've got some awesome news. You can save up to 35% off of Cozy Earth right now, but hurry. This offer won't last. Go to CozyEarth.com, enter the promo code Majority Report at checkout for up to 35% off your first order. That's CozyEarth.com, promo code Majority Report. CozyEarth.com. Put a link in the podcast and YouTube, obviously. Also, I just want to remind you, tomorrow is the end date. Wait, what? Today? Midnight. Oh, it's midnight.
So
March 7th at 0:00 a.m. That's not a time. The sale ends tonight at 11:59 p.m. Maybe you get a couple extra seconds. But so you got to do this. The new Sunset Lake Sebade.com Delta 9 gummies. They contain 5 milligrams of hemp-derived THC and 50 milligrams of Sebade, gentle 10-to-1 blend that you're sure to love. I'm a big fan of the gummies. I think people know that. I take the melatonin gummies they have. I take the Focus gummies with lion's mane and cordyceps and Sebade. But they also have ones with ashwagandha. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. that make you relax. They also have sour gummies. And they have the other THC with the full spectrum THC. That's just 1 milligram. I don't know what the difference between the Delta 9 and the hemp derived and the other THC is, but for whatever reason, the 5 milligrams of hemp derived THC is you can mail, up to 5 milligrams. Bradley, what was your experience? I won't take them during the week.
Oh, loved it.
Someone saw Dune 2 last night.
Very impactful, very enjoyable when I was awake and when I was asleep.
There you go. Folks, right now when you use the code DELTA at checkout, you get 25% off of all of Sunset Lake's gummies, including these new Delta 9 gummies. Sale ends on March 6th. See sunsetlakesabade.com for terms and conditions. As always, you can get 20% off site-wide with the code LEFT is best. One word. Okay, quick break, and then we'll be talking to Dave Weigel. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Dave Weigel, writer at Semafor, author of the Americana newsletter. Do yourself a favor, folks. This is a great newsletter to catch up on. And not just like electoral stuff, but like sort of an electoral plus in my mind. Dave, welcome to the program.
It's good to be back. Thanks, guys.
And
Thanks,
I see
Dave.
you're in D.C. This is one of the first times I think we've spoken to you where you're not literally running to catch an airplane.
That happens all the time. If it's after election day, that the odds of that are very high. And today, no, I'm in an office. It's very sterile and like THX 1138 looking. So we're ready to have a good conversation.
All right, fantastic. Obviously, well, maybe we should start. I think people are not terribly surprised that Donald Trump and Joe Biden won most of the delegates last night. There may be some people out there who are sort of blown away by American Samoa and going to some rando. But what to you are the top stories coming out of this, to the extent that there's anything that we wouldn't necessarily have been as sure that we would be about Trump and Biden?
Oh, when it comes to the presidential race, I would say that's pretty well covered. The spin from the Haley campaign, the now ex-Haley campaign, that Trump needs to appeal to her voters because they were not convinced by him and they're not automatically going to him. A little more proof for that. I mean, it was deteriorating week by week, but she was getting about 20% of self-identified Republicans by the end of the campaign, worse in places like Oklahoma. Anywhere except the Beltway, basically, she was a non-starter. So that's a little more clarity. I don't think there are as many Haley voters that are gettable for Biden as we might have thought 2 weeks ago. And with Uncommitted, I think that's the only other interesting story in the primary that's left. Kind of a bad thing for Biden, because I'm in this industry. We like to cover conflict and campaigns and momentum. And the only game in town for the next few weeks is Uncommitted. So next week, Washington State votes. It turns out you can kind of turn a key and get activists, or I'm not trying to patronize what they're doing, but activists who want to stay involved in the electoral process but want Biden to pull support for what Israel's doing in Gaza have been organizing really quickly behind Uncommitted. So it's not been a problem for him getting the nomination. It is revealing how quickly that can be organized. And even I was just watching on the way into this, Adam Schiff, who had this completely victorious speech, the Senate nominee, the one candidate in that race who didn't support a ceasefire at all. He's giving his victory speech in the California Senate primary, and he's interrupted by ceasefire protesters. Like, we learned that is not going away in this race at all.
In fact, we just played a clip of both those. He was interrupted twice during the day. Once at a rally, and then following you, we're going to be talking to Joe Mizrahi, who is the Secretary Treasurer of the UFCW in Washington State, about that Uncommitted vote. But I want to just let's just go back to the Haley thing for 1 minute. Is your sense, you've been on the road, you've been talking to these Haley voters. I think she overperformed the polling average in Virginia, but that is an open primary, so it's a little bit more difficult to sort of assess. But do you think that there is a significant portion of the Haley vote that will abandon Trump in the fall? Because my experience has always been Republicans, like 98% of the people who voted for Mitt Romney, 99 voted for Donald Trump. And in 2016, like, Republicans vote for Republicans. But do you have a sense that there's any that hadn't already defected in 2020?
A few from 2020. There are voters for whom January 6th was a deal breaker and they cannot go back to Trump for that reason. Does that mean they'll vote for Biden? I feel like that's more likely than not voting at all. There are going to be voters who vote for Biden, and we saw this in 2020, then vote Republican down the ballot. I don't think that has changed a lot. There was a lot of opportunistic pro-Haley voting. A lot of independents and Democrats who were never going to vote for her, even if she was the nominee, and I met some, never going to vote for her, definitely never going to vote for Trump. They were always going to vote for Biden. So I think there's a small number of people who were committed to her version of the Republican Party, committed to not wanting Trump back, and they're going to be in play for Biden, who reached out to them immediately, put out a statement immediately. I noticed a statement that said more about Haley voters than he said about Uncommitted voters so far. Because in Michigan, after that, Biden didn't say anything. He immediately appealed to Haley voters, which is a smart thing to do. But those voters are going to disagree with him on maybe 90% of policy. I'd say I'd leave aside, don't overthrow the government and support Ukraine. Those are the things they probably agree with him on. There are always voters like that. There are single or double issue voters. That's the Haley population. And we learned there are a lot of them in North Carolina, in Virginia, in Michigan, 300,000 in Michigan. A lot of those Haley voters, I do think, end up being tempted to vote for Biden.
Interesting. And why do you think she was doing this? I mean, I know this is
the
hard
whole campaign or the end stage.
Staying in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that's not a huge part of the coverage, but is true, is that she's now the first Republican woman and the first woman of color to win a primary for president ever, which she wouldn't have been if she just quit after she lost her home state. She stayed in through D.C. and Vermont, and she got that. She's going to walk away with more than 1 million votes. So she also, it was hard to read in some ways. You don't want to sound naive about politicians, that they're, when are they being cynical, when are they being honest? You really did get the sense from covering her, though, that she having started out in a position that she thought Trump was so damaged he couldn't be the nominee, kind of flip-flopped on whether she would even run against him. As the race went on, she had real contempt for what he was doing and how dishonest he was. Surprise, surprise! She worked for him. She should have known about this.
It seems a little late to come to that conclusion.
Right,
I mean, we're 8 years after this guy first comes on the political scene.
Well, now it's personally affecting her and in opposition to her. So.
Yeah, and I think she really did get more angry about the way he was attacking her personally and his Ukraine position. She believes that. She is a internationalist Republican who believes that if Trump gets in there and cuts a deal with Putin, the world's going to be less safe. She really did talk herself into that, and had donors talked into it too. So I thought it was sincere, her desire to stay in and become a more relevant figure on that side of the party, a very shrunken side of the party that's maybe 15 to 20% of the GOP, and getting smaller. Maybe we'll talk about these other races that were on the ballot yesterday. But a big trend I was writing about last night, and we'll do more this week, is Republicans who crossed Trump in some way or crossed pro-Trump allies like Ken Paxton in Texas. They were losing their primaries, or they were doing worse. There was much more opposition to them. I mean, she was standing for a section of the party that can win stuff, the Brian Kemp sort of Glenn Youngkin side of the party that has made a lot of concessions to Trump populism, but are also fiscal conservatives and love spending money on NATO. She really thinks that is in danger if Trump is just allowed 4 years with no opposition. So I thought that's why she was doing it. So some of the bragging rights you get from getting a million votes and being the first woman to win a primary in the GOP, and some of it was really, no, having seen this guy up close and seeing how he run against me, I can't just take this.
And I mean, because I my sense just from afar was that she was looking to damage him in the general. Like, I don't know that she ever thought she could beat him, but I think she really is. I mean, her future is really contingent upon him losing anyways.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you said that. That's really it. I didn't have to interrupt you. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, I just, that's, people, it's one thing, she thinks it's the right thing to do, but what is it that she thinks she's doing? And I think that it's really, she hung in there as long as she could for it to damage him in the general election, because she never had illusions that she was going to win this primary.
And we should also ask the question of all of those donations that she received, what is their motivation in donating to her campaign? And is it the same thing that Sam is saying, to damage Trump in the general?
Well, some of them really do see her as a potential president in 2028, or a figure in the Republican Party who's going to help keep their faction alive for however long they can. And I was interrupting because I was glad you said that. The world where she's relevant is one where Trump blows the election and he's gone 1 for 3. At that point, does the party, I'm asking this in an open-ended way, does the party say, well, that doesn't work anymore? We need to actually make some concessions to this side of the GOP that we all call neocons and shills and rhinos. We need some of them back. I'm not convinced that would happen. That's the only world should be relevant. The other world is Trump wins, his vice president is the front runner, and she's irrelevant probably for good. And she's not that old. I mean, she'll be around for, if she was running at Joe Biden's age, she'd be running in the late 2040s, 2050s. But there are a lot of Republicans who were ambitious, and like Mike Gallagher in Wisconsin, the congressman, who found out, I don't know what to do in this version of the party right now. I'm going to bench myself either for maybe a decade or forever. That's the position that she's in, definitely. And how can she influence the party? I mean, she said today she's going to keep using her voice. Some of that stuff was, I think, kind of rote and pat, like, I'm going to keep speaking out for term limits. But really, her being a voice that knows how to get booked on cable, knows how to get in front of elite audiences, not so much Republican meetings. I think if she showed up in a Harris County GOP meeting right now, she'd get booed. But as a relevant person who's going to be drawn, she likes being relevant. Who doesn't? She does have a voice now, and she can be a Republican in the chorus of people saying, my party's going the wrong direction. It's easy for me to imagine Trump getting elected, and then in January, February 2025, she's one of the people denouncing some of the stuff he's doing. Will that make her president? Probably not. Does that make her relevant in a way she wouldn't have been if she just punked out like Tim Scott did. Yeah, I don't think Tim Scott made a different choice to stay in the Trump camp, and he's you see his reward, just like showing up at every Trump rally to get made fun of.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think if Trump loses, I think we're still probably another 4 to 8 years away from the Republican Party, making any type of shift, if that shift ever comes. But all right, so let's talk about the Uncommitted. Minnesota was the biggest showing.
Right.
We just had somebody IM us in Wadena, Minnesota. 216 people voted for Biden and 47 voted for Uncommitted, which was, I guess, the worst place that Biden performed. 2012, there was no Minnesota primary. I tried to look this up to try and get an assessment of what the uncommitted votes were at that time. What is, I mean, you mentioned this is like sort of turnkey, and people, it's a great, that's why I think it's such a great sort of protest. And what's your sense of like how upsetting it is to the Biden campaign? In other words, like how much, it's very hard for them to say this is meaningless to themselves if they've said in the run up, like, we got to stop this.
Yes. And it's a great protest for them. Just if I could be as neutral as possible, what are the options for Biden and people who want him to change course on Israel? One would be not voting for him at all. One would be voting for Cornel West. One would be voting for Trump to accelerate the conditions and put him back in office. One is organizing right now in these primaries, and there's a lot of, when I talk to, and you talk to these folks too, you talk to more of them. You talk to uncommitted organizers; they're very joyful. They're horrified what's happening. This has given them purpose. They are building community when they felt lost for 5 months, and they saw people with their views about Israel getting hounded out of conversations, out of jobs. It is keeping I think the Slate pitch that I still have in me from experience at Slate is it's actually keeping the Democratic coalition together in a strange way that I don't think it would be if these voters were all saying, screw it, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. I mean, I talked to Jill Stein a couple weeks ago. She is campaigning for those voters, saying, yes, this is another reason to bail on Biden, and they're choosing not to do so. They're choosing to build some power ahead of the convention in Chicago. And just tell the stories. A big part of this is the public-facing media part of it. It's just saying, hey, instead of a story that says, oh, and by the way, Joe Biden got 85% of the vote in this primary, la-di-da, the story of these primaries on the ground has been meet the people who are organizing for a ceasefire, listen to the reasons why they're doing it, and maybe include a poll which says most Democratic voters, supermajority of them, want him to change course on this. So yeah, they're getting. This sounds almost Pollyanna-ish because it's not good for Biden that everywhere he goes he gets protested, but he's getting protested by people who would like to be able to vote for him and morally don't think they can. Right? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying anything new to you guys, but that's how I see this in the primary. It is not it is a problem for Biden right now that is preventing a much worse, existential, fatal problem for Biden in November.
It shows that they're engaged, is basically, I mean, what you're saying. This is an engagement as opposed to a resignation. And I saw that the state party in Minnesota says that there are going to be 11 uncommitted delegates going to the convention, and that means 2 from Michigan as well. So that paired with the inevitable protests at the Democratic convention in Chicago sets up a situation where, like, as much as the Biden administration wants to put out press releases and ignore the uncommitted vote, it's going to be a situation at the convention.
Yeah, and they're responding to them. You guys talking about how they responded. They responded basically in saying, we saw the vice president's speech in Selma this week. You've seen the way that Biden talks about it. The way they see this politically is that ceasefire is popular. Cutting off all aid to Israel, all military aid right now is not popular, but it is with Democrats. And if Biden negotiated some sort of ceasefire that stopped what Israel's doing, stop people from getting shot to death when they're going for food supplies, etc., for 6 weeks, that would not satisfy a lot of people organizing for Uncommitted. It would satisfy a lot of Democrats. So they would still get protested. Look, they're going to get protested over this policy through the administration, and they were getting protested on climate before that. They're going to get protested. I think this is the difference mentally between me and a lot of people who cover politics is I I see, direct action is part of the political menu. It's not it. Donald Trump doesn't get protested that much because people are hauled out of the arena, and he's got a smaller coalition than Biden. Biden has a messier coalition, including some people who want to show up and pressure him, and sometimes it works. I mean, I covered a version of this with Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the Obama years. People would show up and they'd heckle and they'd make that the story, but they listened. So that is what's happening with Biden. His response to it, the way that I've seen, Walid Shahid and other organizers I've talked to, they've taken credit for if there is a change in policy. So I guess the Biden administration would have to put up with that. If it looks, and this is if I'm Marco Rubio or whatever, if I'm a Republican who wants to attack Biden, if there is a change in policy, if there is a temporary ceasefire, and Bibi doesn't like it, I would say, as Marco Rubio, Biden is listening to these far left radicals who hate Israel or something of that nature. They don't really care about that. I mean, like, their goal here is ending the war as soon as possible because people are dying.
Right.
60% of Americans disapprove of Biden's handling of this. I mean, and how long did it take? I know it's different because there's the nationalism element and the 9/11 part of it, but how long did it take for the public to begin to turn on the war on terror? It took much longer.
Much
longer, years. And so this is a seismic shift in now. Okay, so tomorrow will be March 7th. In 5 months? Is that 6 months? 5 months? I can't do math. But that's a very, very significant kind of shift for Biden. And that doesn't just confine itself to the Democratic far left activists or to Arab American voters in Minnesota or Michigan.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, for every uncommitted voter, there are several Biden voters who are sticking with him but wish he'd change the policy.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking just a few minutes to Joe Mizrahi about this. Other big stories, obviously, California, we've talked about that. Schiff got protested twice. It's a big loss to both lose Porter and Lee in the House and to not have them in the primary because they need to step down because of California law. But in that Orange County district, running to replace Katie Porter, talk about this AIPAC dynamic, because AIPAC is going to be the big story in a lot of these primaries. They dumped something like $4 or $5 million into that race. You wrote a piece about it.
Probably end up being $5 million, yeah.
Wondering why. I mean, I think they do stuff to set an example in many respects. And I suspect they chose this one because even though Andy Min didn't necessarily show that he was, Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib about this, they want to set an example. We'll come after you if we even get a whiff that you could potentially be, in some way, a dissenting view on Israel. But he still won.
He still won. It hasn't been called yet.
Dave,
as votes
sorry,
come
I said
in.
Andy. Yeah, apologies.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah, but I was in the district a week ago, really, with Min and with Joanna Weiss, and Min said to me, I'm not entirely sure why they did this. I asked him, what would you say to AIPAC? And I said, my first question, why'd you do this? The backstory, as I know it, is that yes, Min did not call for a ceasefire. No one did. Min's position on the war is basically identical to the Biden position of 2 weeks ago. So I would say he might be even talking less about the need for a ceasefire than Biden is right now. But candidates have questionnaires, they have policy papers and position papers, and AIPAC asked for them, DMFI asked for them, J Street asked for them. My impression is that what Min said about his Israel positions did not check every box for AIPAC, and that worried them. And that is how they prefer to operate, is by saying you need to be loyal on these sets of issues. You need to be completely trustworthy. You're not going to bend on Israel if you get this kind of pressure. So he was not there endorsing BDS or anything, or putting up a Leila Khaled monument or something. He just wasn't as adamant that he was going to support Israel in every decision that the current government made. And based on their lack of confidence, they said, well, we have a candidate who is. And they went all in. They also had in that district, Emily's list was supporting Joanna Weiss. So they had a credible Democratic candidate who agreed with them 100% and also had a different story to tell. Also, Min was vulnerable on the fact that he got a DUI during the campaign, which he was telling me the fact that they spent $5 million mostly on that attack, he thinks maybe inoculated him. He's apologized many times for it. He quit drinking after it. Voters have been forgiving of some things, not of others. But his thought was that, yeah, this was crazy that they were doing this, but it might help him. But the reason AIPAC, etc., targeted him is that he was there on 90% of things, not 100%, and they didn't like that he was. He's also, talking to him, he's a very confident guy. He doesn't genuflect. He might have come off as the sort of person who could be independent-minded at some point down the line. And they don't want that.
Okay, here's the most important part of this, though. How many losses does AIPAC have to have until their ability to raise this kind of money? You know, when you've got $100 million, to drop $5 million in one of these races because the person's a little bit iffy, you're doing that so that you don't, in part, so that there are other races in the future that you don't have to drop money into because you are disciplining lawmakers in that way. But the question becomes, when they start losing some of these races where they put $5 million in, I'm thinking, you know, Summer Lee in the last cycle, but if there are 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 Dave Mins out there where they lose, their ability to go back to their funders and say, hey, we need to do this is going to be diminished because people are going to lose faith in them. Do you have a sense of what that figure is and, you know, where the other big races for AIPAC are going to be?
Well, yeah, and you mentioned Summer Lee. She lost. They lost to her last cycle twice. Lost in the primary, lost in the general, and she's still being targeted this year. She's actually, she backed out of a CARE event in part because of pressure from AIPAC and from local Jewish leaders, saying that they were worried their congressman was embracing people who'd said crazy things about October 7th. So when I talk to, and you talk to the same folks, when I talk to activists on the other side of this, they just assume there will be a cornucopia of money that never stops. That there's never going to be a point where AIPAC, DMFI, et cetera, say, oh, we're tapped out and we look kind of embarrassed because of this one loss. This cycle, they're not saying they're going to beat everyone who has called for a ceasefire. Taking out 1 or 2 members of Congress and Jamal Bowman in New York and Cori Bush in Missouri look like the most vulnerable for, again, external reasons. These are both people who have had, in Bowman's case, the fire alarm story, in Bush's case, spending money on their family and security. These are stories that have hurt them locally, kind of like what happened with Dave Mint. So they look for the member that is beatable for other reasons. With a credible candidate in the district. They've got that in New York too. It's debatable if they have that with Summer Lee. I don't think that if their win record is 3 for 100, that's still 3 people that they took out. I mean, the Justice Democrat, I'm not making a 1-to-1 comparison, obviously, but Justice Democrats lost most of its races in 2018, but it elected four squad members, and it beat Joe Crowley and it beat Mike Capuano. You don't need to have that many shots connect. And so I've not detected, and talking to Mark Melman at DMFI and the people who are in this orbit, they're not worried if they put money in a race and lose, that people know, look how much money we can burn on a race without winning. It doesn't mean we're going to stop. You cannot stop this strategy. So yeah, it's a good question. I don't think they are actually looking at their budget and looking at their win-loss record. Will we notice a win-loss record? Certainly. But if you're a member of Congress, just in a vacuum, would you prefer to have $5 million spent against you or not have $5 million spent against you? You prefer to not have it at all. And just the threat of it remains really potent, even if they don't win everything.
On some level, losing and then being able to continue to spend is almost more terrifying than winning in a couple instances, I guess. But all right. The other big stories, just let's run through them really quick. What are things? I mean, obviously in North Carolina, there's going to be a governor's race with frankly, a raving lunatic. But outside of North Carolina, what else did we miss?
Well, Texas was fascinating. There were 2 races, in Travis County and Harris County, 2 races for DA. Where in Harris it was a fairly conservative, criminal justice reform skeptical incumbent who lost in a landslide. In Austin, it was an incumbent. This is one of the stranger stories of the night. A progressive DA who got elected in 2020, took office in 2021. In his tenure, lots of crimes have fallen below what they were before he took over. But the narrative in Austin, and this has been litigated in a few elections since 2020 in Austin. The narrative there was, we elected a progressive and look how bad things got. If you've been to Austin the last few years, there's some patchy parts of 6th Street, but it clearly has not fallen into disrepair. They both won, but just as interesting was a lot of Republicans, I think 6 so far, and it might go up to 10, who had voted to impeach Ken Paxton or had crossed Greg Abbott on his school vouchers plan. Paxton and Abbott and their allies, including the Club for Growth, Jeff Yass, etc., spent money to beat them. And I mean, Ken Paxton's impeachment attorney in Texas probably, as of this morning, probably beat a state rep who voted to impeach Paxton, a Republican. And so the Republican Party got more conservative. Where voters had the chance to make them more conservative, they got more conservative. In North Carolina, there was a Turning Point USA campus leader who beat an incumbent, is going to sail to the state legislature. So the Republicans turning out with Trump at the top of the primary ticket was helpful for a lot of their more conservative candidates. Now, we're still going through this. California takes forever. California is the nightmare for anyone who does election analysis because it takes 3 weeks to determine who actually won. It's not clear if that worked the same way there in school board races, etc. But in federal and state legislative races, that was a big story, I thought, of Republicans being moved to the right by their voters who wanted MAGA-aligned candidates.
That's going to, we're probably going to be revisiting that story in the general when these people have to come in, even in Texas or California, or certainly California, but and maybe even in North Carolina, I would imagine, and other states like that. I mean, if that's happening, if they're fielding candidates who are that much more Trumpy, it could mean pickups, I guess, for Democrats in those areas, theoretically, right? But I guess we'll see.
Some Democrats I was talking to today were optimistic. I mean, Texas Democrats have had bad and good luck, but they're doing a little bit worse in the Rio Grande Valley. They're doing much better in the suburbs, and they have been gaining ground. Like if the speaker, the big race there, Speaker of the House of Texas, who again had crossed Paxton, had crossed Abbott. If he loses his seat, they probably don't pick that up. But the story they'll tell is, look, we're the party that's sane, and we're one. I mean, the reason school vouchers plan in Texas fail in Republican legislature is because it's not popular. They will run. They have a message to run on, like Democrats in Michigan, Pennsylvania, tougher state. But yeah, that's a good point. They really are optimistic they can start chipping away at Republican control in that state.
Dave Weigel, always a pleasure. We're going to put a link to your Americana newsletter because people should read it. It's always a good read. Really appreciate you coming on today, and glad to see you getting a little bit of rest.
Just a little, and I'm looking forward to this next interview. I'm going to hang up and listen.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
We'll talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
Dave.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Joe Mizrahi, Secretary-Treasurer of the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW Local 3000 here on the uncommitted endorsement, or the endorsement for Uncommitted that these guys announced last week. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Joining us now, the Secretary-Treasurer of the United Food and Commercial Workers, UFCW, Local 3000 in Washington State, Joe Mizrahi. Joe, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so Joe, you guys last week, was it March? Maybe it wasn't even last week. Last week, endorsed Uncommitted in the Washington State primary. It's happening in a week. Walk us through who did the. But before we get there, why don't you tell us just a little bit about the UFCW Local 3000? It's the biggest union in the state.
Correct. Yeah, we're the biggest union in the state. We're also the biggest UFCW local in the U.S. So we represent about 55,000 workers across Washington, part of Idaho, and part of Oregon.
And how did you guys decide, like, what was the process in which you made this endorsement?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I could take a step back, we were one of the first local unions in the country to endorse a ceasefire and push for that. And then, brought a lot of other labor folks along with that call. And then, over the last months since then, we've seen obviously a disappointing response from the Biden administration on that issue. Simultaneously, but not totally disconnected, we've seen some alarming poll numbers, and we've been worried about Biden's viability in the general election. So we pulled our board together, which is 48 rank and file workers, work in the grocery industry, healthcare industry, and just kind of kicked off this conversation with our board about what we should do in the Washington primary. And I was surprised. It was a unanimous recommendation. It was also not, it was a challenging conversation, but not as challenging as you would think. People got there pretty quickly on why this was an important priority.
All right. So if I hear you correctly, there's two elements to this. One is to help Biden's viability. I want to get to that in a second, but let's take the first. Why is the union calling for a ceasefire? Let's talk about that part about it. Like, where is it in unionism that, you guys are supposed to just negotiate with the local hotel or whatever it is? Why you make an endorsement?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally core to unionism. The whole idea of a union is moving beyond the individualistic, moving towards collective power. And I think that, we can't only care about workers within our jurisdiction, within our borders. We have to care about workers worldwide. And we also have members who are deeply impacted by this. We have Yasmin, who works at a grocery store. She's one of our board members. She's a Muslim American. She was saying when she got her primary ballot, she cried. She's always voted, but she felt like no one on the ballot actually cared about her and her community. So having this uncommitted option, she was so happy about that.
All right, let's talk about the other part. I mean, because it seems to me there's got to be some measure of dilemma. We follow a lot of like the unionization stuff. I mean, Joe Biden, there's always more that can be done to help unions and unionization efforts. But at least in my lifetime, I don't think we've had a better National Labor Relations Board. Certainly not a better general counsel. We have an administration, Biden shows up and walks with the UAW. I mean, this is a guy who is, relatively speaking, particularly, past administrations, and certainly relative to Trump, favorable to unions. Like, walk us through the thought process in terms of the dilemma there, but also how you guys perceive this as being helpful to Biden, ultimately long run, maybe.
Yeah, I think that there's two parts to that. I mean, one is everything you're saying is totally true. Biden, we said it 1,000 times, he's the best labor president in our lifetime now. Like, that's a pretty low bar, admittedly, unfortunately. But it's all true. Now, one of the things about that, though, is that almost everything Biden's done has been through board appointments, through great actions by the NLRB, through executive orders. And we know that one of the challenging things about that is it doesn't build permanent infrastructure for workers. It's something that Trump could undo on week one in office. And we know that in part because a lot of the bad things that Trump did for labor, Biden undid in week one in office, right? So we feel like it's part of our core responsibility to protect that great labor legacy that Biden is leaving by making sure that he or another Democrat is reelected. So that's the first part. The second part is what you were saying. We think that having a robust primary debate, having these conversations now in the primary, will ultimately make Joe Biden a better general election candidate should he get the nomination. We saw, tens of thousands of voters register in Michigan to vote uncommitted. And these are voters who, on the Washington ballot, it's only the primary. It's only the presidential primary. So we're talking to voters who would not otherwise vote in the primary, and we're engaging them. We're talking about issues. Ultimately, I think a lot of those voters will vote for Joe Biden if he's the nominee, and his whole campaign will be stronger for it.
Have you guys gotten any like pushback from the other Washington or other, like, from the Democratic Party? I mean, you said you were a little bit surprised on how quickly you were able to coalesce around this idea on your board. Did somebody get a phone call like, how can you guys do this? This is horrible. Is there any sense that there's any pushback to this?
We were getting those phone calls immediately, like right away. Absolutely. I mean, people are very worried that by doing this, we will somehow be weakening Biden, that we need to circle the wagons, that, he's our guy and we need to be fully committed to him. I just don't buy that argument. And I also think that it's dismissive of the real concerns that workers have right now. But those calls came right away.
How have Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell, the two senators representing the state of Washington, have they reacted? Have they responded?
They have not responded to us, and I know that they are supporters of Biden. But I will say that they have not also reached out to us and said, "How dare you do this?" either. So they've been pretty neutral with us on it.
What's happening outside of Washington State? Well, I guess before we get there, what are you guys doing? Like how much you made this endorsement? Are you doing stuff on the ground to build momentum around this? And if so, what?
Yeah, there's a broader Washington Uncommitted campaign that is mostly, generating from the ceasefire community. So we are linked up with them. We're helping them. We're helping provide infrastructure for that campaign. But internally, we spend most of our time talking to our own members. When you have 50,000 members, it's a lot of voters to talk to. So we're reaching out to our membership about the uncommitted vote. And I would say that when we're talking about pushback from DC that we've gotten, we have not seen that same level of pushback from our members. Similar to our board, our members are very receptive to that message. And I think many of them will vote when they otherwise wouldn't have. I think outside of Washington State, I know that we're lucky in Washington State that we actually have uncommitted as an option on our ballot, which isn't true in every state. So some folks, like, you have to go through the process of writing it in. But I know that there are other states like Colorado where non-committed is an option, where they're pursuing similar campaigns.
Are you guys, as the biggest local of the United Food and Commercial Workers in the country, are you guys? I mean, do you confer with other chapters across the country? Is there talk with the national office? Like, are you guys organizing outside of the state in any way?
Yeah, we have allies with other locals across the country. We're having those conversations, and not just within the UFCW. We're talking with other like-minded local unions from internationals across the country. I would say our national organization, I don't think is at this stage on the uncommitted train, and we were a bit rogue in our decision. But each local, because it's a statewide primary, has autonomy to do that.
Do you anticipate any big announcements that we think we'll be hearing in the next couple of days about that?
No.
And let me ask you this, just lastly, just a little bit, like, do you feel like, when you're out there saying that, a lot of these people are going to vote for Biden anyway, do you think it provides leverage? I mean, I think there's some people who are skeptical of that, despite the fact that there's a lot of people who don't want you to do it, which is a good indication that it has some hell. I mean, it's providing something, how do you navigate that question?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's hard on the ceasefire thing. I think we've already just seen in the last few weeks that there's been more movement since Michigan from the Biden administration on the ceasefire front. I saw, Vice President Harris said something. They've committed to more aid. It's not enough, but I think we've seen some movement. And I don't know that the uncommitted campaign, what % of credit for that the uncommitted campaign can take, but I think that every little bit of pressure helps. On the viability point, I mean, I do think that a growing chorus of questions will hopefully make the Biden campaign, get the candidate out there, campaign harder, make the case against Trump. And so I do think that, every little bit will help.
Joe Mizrahi, Secretary Treasurer of the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 3000. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it, and appreciate the endorsement for Uncommitted out there. I hope it does have the impact that we hope it does.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program. You seem surprised by it.
No, man. Just made a face.
Yeah,
you did. I picked the wrong one out of my toolbox, I think. I meant to go Phillips head.
There you go.
It's nonsense.
Oh, look at that. She's pulling out the
See?
screwdriver.
That was something I knew you'd appreciate. Next up, a horticulture reference.
There you go. Then we've hit it. We've hit all of my faves. Folks, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only help keep this show alive, you help it thrive. And you also get the free show, free of commercials. You get the fun half. Occasionally, you get an extra, discount. Like if I can get my crap together, I'm going to be sending out an email tonight to members with an extra 5% off of their cedarseeds.com. Occasionally, that stuff like that happens. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority. You will get 10% off. Emma.
ESPN, we gave a little preview.
Go to a single for a second. I
yes.
gotta run to the bathroom.
Yes, no problem. No Matt here today to go help Sam, unfortunately, but he's waiting.
One second. Let me just go help Sam in the bathroom.
Yeah. I'll run this solo.
You stick around with Don Jr. over there.
ESPN, Bradley and I spoke about the pending NFL free agency, which is going to kick off on Monday, where I will be on my vacation at a warm place, but we talked a little bit about that, and NHL trade deadline being on Friday. We had some more thoughts on like Jason Kelsey's retirement, Justin Fields' next destination, what the Atlanta Falcons should do at quarterback, youtube.com/ESPN show. And Matt is cautiously staying at home today just because he had a little bit of the sniffles, but he is, they're off this week for Left Reckoning because David Griscom just got married. That's where Matt was last week, over the weekend. So they are taking a bit of a break. But
respite.
if you want to support them or give David Griscom a congratulations, you can become a patron at patreon.com/leftreckoning. Or you can just start to spread some of their content around on Reddit, on Twitter. That was one of Matt's recommendations. So, patreon.com/leftreckoning for that. All right, folks. The number is 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflakes has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males
psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. In light of that, the talk we just had with Joe Mizrahi, the Secretary Treasurer of the UFCW, Local 3000, biggest United Food and Commercial Workers Union local in the country and the biggest union in Washington State, on their endorsement of Uncommitted for the primary that is going to take place Tuesday, March 13th, next week. In fact, is it Tuesday, March 12th or 13th? 12th. Sorry about that. Here is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz speaking to CNN's Abby Phillip after the near 20% uncommitted vote in Minnesota, which, you know, it's tough to compare it because Minnesota's had a caucus for the past, I guess, I don't know, decades. But 20%, that's pretty big.
There's a sizable, Arab American population in Minnesota, like Michigan. That's part of why there's a spotlight on it. Minnesota, though, is supposed to be an easy win for Biden. So this should raise some concerns. This was so substantial in such a short period of time that they're sending 11 delegates to the convention, uncommitted, representing just Minnesota. That's what CBS is reporting. So, and
keep in mind, you know, there is you have Dean Phillips on the ballot, as well as Williamson. Phillips got 8.5%. Phillips is from Minnesota. So there is, in this instance, there's an ample opportunity for people to vote against Biden if it's just an empty vote against Biden. If it's just a way to say, I am unsatisfied with Biden, they could have voted for Phillips. It's not like he was unknown commodity. I mean, I can see it if I look at my ballot, I'm like, I don't know who Phillips is, but he's in Minnesota. You had a lot of people who were familiar with who he was. So that 19-20% of uncommitted is doing so with an expressive purpose. And here's Tim Walz responding to that.
About 40,000 votes right now, 20% of the vote going to uncommitted. And we've seen that already in this primary in Michigan. What message are voters in your state trying to send to President Biden? And what do you want to see President Biden do in response?
Yeah, look, they're engaged. We're really proud in Minnesota. Civic responsibility. We have some of the highest voter turnouts. These are voters that are deeply concerned, as we all are. The situation in Gaza is intolerable. And I think trying to find a solution, a lasting two-state solution, certainly the president's move towards humanitarian aid and asking us to get to a ceasefire, that's what they're asking to be heard. And that's what they should be doing. We've gone through this before, and we know that now we make sure we've got 8 months. We start bringing these folks back in. We listen to what they're saying. That's a healthy thing that's happening here. But I would note that that the former president lost twice as many votes here in Minnesota to Nikki Haley. And I've seen some of these exit polls out of North Carolina and others. 80% of folks said they're not voting for him who voted for Nikki Haley. We'll get these folks back. I think it's take them seriously. Their message is clear that they think this is an intolerable situation and that we can do more. And I think the president's hearing that.
Well,
I mean,
let's hope.
Let's hope. Show it in action. Like Abby Phillip now asking, what are their asks? I don't know. Ask them. Like, they're pretty explicit. And the only time that they've started to care, this is why Uncommitted is really important. The only time I've noticed these cable news pundits, specifically on somewhere like CNN, begin to care, is really now that it's become a question of electoralism. Like, once Uncommitted or voters that are demanding a ceasefire or an end to the genocide in Gaza, once that becomes an electoral question, you get these kinds of horse race folks to engage in it in a level that they wouldn't previously.
That's what Dave Weigel just told us in that interview earlier, is that now with essentially Nikki Haley out of the race, the one sort of story that exists out there is how big is the Uncommitted movement and whether Biden will respond to them. And so that's a good situation. I mean, we could, it'll be fascinating to see what kind of numbers we see out of Washington State. Now, of course, Biden is not in a danger of losing Washington State, I don't think, in the general election. So it's not a question of that, but you get a sense that they want to control the narrative, and this is a sense for them that the narrative, they're losing control of the narrative. And so hopefully this has some impact on them. But Tim Walz,
I just want to also say, like, I heard Debbie Stabenow on the night of the Michigan primary when there was all those uncommitted voters as well, when this campaign really kicked off. And you can see how, like, Tim Walz, he's the governor, Debbie Stabenow, senator from Michigan, like, they have to be responsive to those constituencies too. So even though she's such a standard Democratic politician, Walz is better than standard in my estimation, but she's an establishment Democrat senator through and through. The nervousness of having to respond to the uncommitted constituency for her own ass is also important here too.
Yep. Hopefully they're providing some pressure for the Biden administration.
Yeah.
All right. Let's. Walz made a point of talking about Nikki Haley's numbers impacting or reflecting on perhaps what we're going to see in the general election. Broadly speaking, I'm skeptical. Republicans end up voting for Republicans. At this time in 2016, you had Republican Congress people coming out going, I can't even look my children in the face and contemplate voting for Donald Trump. If he comes here, I'll sock it to him right into his face. And then 3 days later, they're on they're begging cameras to take videos of them doing donor calls on behalf of Donald Trump. So I wouldn't read too much into this, but it is a different era. And there may be some people who are sick of Donald Trump, but they will not have the opportunity to vote for Nikki Haley again. Here is Nikki Haley announcing her suspension of her campaign. Still no endorsement for Trump. And I think, which I don't think we're going to get one from Nikki Haley, because I think in the last couple of months, her campaign has been about helping Donald Trump lose. For all, not necessarily, I don't want to say for the wrong reasons, because I think her politics are also horrible, but I'll take it. Here she is.
In all likelihood, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee when our party convention meets in July. I congratulate him and wish him well. I wish anyone well who would be America's president. Our country is too precious to let our differences divide us. I have always been a conservative Republican and always supported the Republican nominee. But on this question, As she did on so many others, Margaret Thatcher provided some good advice when she said, quote, "Never just follow the crowd. Always make up your own mind." It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that. At its best, politics is about bringing people into your cause, not turning them away. And our conservative cause badly needs more people. This is now his time for choosing. I end my campaign with the same words I began it, from the book of Joshua.
I don't care about that. But I do find it sort of fascinating. I would love someone to ask her, like, what are you talking about? Like, who is Donald Trump excluding? Like, what can he do in your mind to not exclude people? Right? I mean, like, it's sort of a fascinating question. I mean, it seems like sort of an obvious one, but I mean, I don't think that she thinks there's something that Donald Trump, never mind what he would do. Like, I want to know what in her mind he could do. Like, what Republican policies is he not following that she has a problem with?
Ukraine,
I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's a Republican, not a Republican policy. I mean,
well, I mean, in the House, right? Like Mitch McConnell was as dogmatic as anybody about getting Ukraine money through. I mean, he's old school in his as is Nikki Haley in their representation of the defense industry.
Okay, Ukraine.
Yeah. But eventually I think Republicans will cave on that stuff because they're not that committed to it. Like, at the same time, they want to send a bunch of money to Israel, and then they're saying we don't want to send it to Ukraine because of the taxpayer.
It's just. I mean, I think it's more just a Trumpy thing. But I'm curious, from her perspective, what is the thing that he could do that she's ostensibly saying that's what would make her vote for? Like, I mean, I think like that's the curious thing about it, because Donald Trump's policies are Republican policies. They are, this is the Republican movement. She's up there denying that racism even exists.
Yeah.
Is that where, like, Trump, instead of being actively racist, he should sort of slide into, I don't think there is racism? Like, I wonder, like, what it is that we are supposed to, like, I don't think she thinks there's anything. But I would be curious as to someone asking her that question, because her policies are just as odious in just about every other, and like she's waiting, like he's got to come out and say cut Social Security and Medicare. Like, wasn't she the one who was?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, what is going to bring people together in her mind?
No, she's not actually sincere in that. I think you're dead on about the fact that she desperately needs Donald Trump to lose. Like, there's a whole class of Republicans in the Senate that need that as well, where they're terrified of their future in leadership or their future in electorally, even if they don't kind of remove the Trumpy wing from the party. And the only way they can do that is by having him be a loser and branded as such.
And let's be clear, I think the Trumpy wing of the party is the party.
Yes.
And like, it's
definitely
not just
the voters.
It's not just the wing, it's the body.
Yeah.
But it is I think it is reasonable, if not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily correct, but I think it's reasonable for someone like Nikki Haley to think, like, if Donald Trump disappeared on November 8th and whatnot, that maybe 4 years from now, there'd be an opportunity for the Trumpness of the Republican Party, which I think is really, they're not perfectly aligned circles, but the Venn diagram is, it's pretty close there. I think that it's reasonable for them to, look, hope springs eternal, that they would have an opportunity because maybe nobody can activate that wing or that part of the Republican Party,
that mass
in a way that Donald Trump can. But
like, I just want to hammer this point home. The Koch brothers didn't want Trump to win, right? No. Or the Koch network didn't. And a lot of big money donors who aren't the Mercers or whatever want somebody who is more controllable. So the problem for the Republicans is that the base loves Trump. They are the Republican Party, but the capitalists that they serve are uneasy about Donald Trump and would prefer a return to the Mitt Romney, Nikki Haley style of politics because it's just more profitable and controllable for them.
Yep. I think that's probably true. Should we do the exit polling? Because I'm not sure. I don't know. Yeah, let's hold. I don't think that's that interesting.
What, number 4?
Is it 6? Number 6?
It's mostly just sort of what we were describing about the agnostic voter for Haley as opposed to Trump that just CNN was reporting on it. We can go. I think
let's
4
do 4.
Yeah,
let's do 4. Yeah.
Well, should we do 4 or 5 first? That's my question. Let's do 5 first. So here's the question of and remember, here's Nikki Haley's out there going I hope Donald Trump can bring us all together and this and that and it probably a lie, but this is a North Carolina voter. She is talking to Shaquille Brewster, who's from NBC News.
He was going around basically talking to North Carolina voters, asking them about Nikki Haley and Trump.
And I guess my point with this is that Republican voters are Republican voters. They're just, I just don't think they're as gettable as, maybe Joe Biden wants to think they are. And I think there's a lot being made of people voting for Nikki Haley that it's not necessarily going to translate in the fall. And here is
and this is
NBC.
The white woman. She's a white woman, right? Here. This is the kind of voter Biden is targeting, that the Democrats and the Republicans are going to be jockeying over white suburban women. That's what they see
let's
are
be
the
clear.
key to. Yeah.
If you're a Republican, there is a 92% chance you are white.
Yes, but my point,
to be clear,
the point is that this is still though, Biden thinks these guys are more gettable than the uncommitted people.
Here we go.
What made you switch from Trump to Nikki Haley?
The man is a lunatic, and I think he's terrible for the country.
What are you thinking about when you say that?
Just that he lies, he cheats, he's bankrupted millions of businesses and people, and I don't see anything good about him.
Let me ask, if Donald Trump is the nominee in November, do you support Joe Biden over Donald Trump?
No.
What made you switch from Trump to...
Loud was the voice of the lonely goat.
I mean,
whoops.
I'm just trying to think of a world where that reporter asked the woman that question and she responds what she would have had to have said about Donald Trump to say, I'm not going to vote for, is she he came to my house. He stabbed my entire family.
Yeah.
And then he, I don't know. Then he kicked us out of the house. He evicted us, and then he stabbed us all. And are you going to vote for Joe Biden in the fall? No.
Nope. Yeah, that's kind of it, right? But
I mean, maybe she stays home.
Yeah.
Which is, maybe she stays home. Maybe she leaves the ballot empty, which is helpful. I mean, it's helpful. It's not necessarily her intent. I don't know, but it seems like how you say he's a lunatic and he's done all these horrible things and this and that. And no, I'm not going to vote against him.
Yeah.
I may not vote for him, but I'm not going to vote against him. Definitely not. That to me is.
That clip was almost mean to play for MSNBC viewers whom were just so invested right up until the very end. I'm sorry, guys. The Lincoln Project doesn't have the reach you think it does.
Now, Militant Apathy on the IM says, wait till Trump is actually on the TV every day. He's worse than he was in 2020. I don't know if he'll be on the TV every day.
I mean, Matt L. last night was saying how it was irresponsible that they played his speech. I don't know. I mean, he's the Republican nominee. I find that conversation to be a little bit silly.
Well, it's also, I think, you can outsmart yourself.
Yeah. Show him. He's not making any sense. But the problem is Biden's not really making that much sense either. And Biden's not going out there. Biden's not talking in public by design. He's afraid of ceasefire protests.
It's a problem for him.
And he can't do Biden in the basement in 2020 when we're not isolating like we were. I mean, 2024 like we were in 2020. I mean, it's just not. It's concerning. I'm way more concerned now than I was 6 months ago, obviously.
The other sort of like headwind that Nikki Haley had, and we saw this clip yesterday that we played that was on Fox News when Will Cain asked a random voter, because somebody at the back in the Fox and Friends studio said, well, why don't you ask a voter if they would vote for a woman? And he went to a woman and she said, no, of course not, because of menopause. And
it'll make her irrational.
It'll make her irrational. Here is another Republican voter, of course, who is just a little bit more clever about it, being interviewed by Shaquille Brewster from NBC News. This is a North Carolina voter.
What do you think of Nikki Haley? Did you ever consider her?
You know, what I got to say, you don't really want to put it on.
Let me hear it.
Well, a woman's not going to be a good president. She don't have no balls to scratch. She's just going to scratch her head. All a woman's good for in my book is having babies and taking care of the house, but that's the old thing, you know. But I'm old school.
So you never even considered her?
No.
Mainly because she's a woman?
Because she's female. I mean, females, don't take me wrong, females know what they're doing, but they still got to have a little bit of guidance. Trump would be the one to guide her through the
What do you think of
They still got any. I mean, you know what's a good sense of when somebody is just like the most misogynistic person is when they refer to women as females. It's such pickup artist language. Gotta hook those females, bro.
And also like the way he says it is just it's like sort of weaponized. It's like she's a female. Like it's like the prefix is very
and she'll just scratch her head. As
opposed to her balls.
As opposed to her balls. I would hope she's not scratch. I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, there are women who can scratch their balls, but like the idea that, but he doesn't want to think about that. But like, what happens when you scratch your balls? Do you ascend to some sort of higher consciousness? Is that what? Is that like I'm not aware.
If that's a non-rhetorical question, I can answer that. Well, what I find impressive about this guy is that he's like, I know this isn't something you're going to want to put on TV.
But I'm going to say it anyway.
But I'm also going to say it with absolutely not a slightest bit of embarrassment. I just wanted to give you a warning and let you know that, listen, and I had a lot of issues with Hillary Clinton. I don't have to do this disclaimer for the rest of my life. And there were a lot of reasons why she lost that were not a function of this. But the reality is, if you got a guy like this who's like, I know this isn't something that, people generally say, but I'm willing to have you put it on national television. When I say it, and I'm going to say it in an unabashed way, I just don't think that females are qualified to be in charge of anything. They should be in the kitchen and this and that. Imagine how this translates into like across the spectrum in terms of like how people assess a candidate. And I don't think that I think a woman could win the presidency in this country, but understand there are headwinds that exist the moment they show up. Now, I also suspect that this guy would not vote for a black or brown person to be president, but I think that he would be less likely to say, I don't want this on, I don't know if you want to hear this on television, then go and say it in such a sort of like a casual manner. I think he would probably say like, I just disagree with him and who he represents or she represents. I think he would probably be a little bit more obtuse about it, but it is fascinating. I have a feeling there's a lot of people who vote this way.
Even if they don't even fully understand that that's why they're doing it.
Correct.
This guy just does. I mean, you got to applaud his consciousness. It must be from all that ball scratching.
I really would love to see the outtakes from this if Brewster actually, like sort of says like, getting back to, I know that's a clever saying. If you're not scratching your balls, you're scratching your head, like you're bewildered. But what is the upside of the value of scratching your balls?
That's it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, okay.
If
other areas
if you're not
to
scratching,
scratch.
if you're not scratching your balls, you're scratching your forehead. You're like, the scratching the head, like, how does this work? But I'm not clear that like you're like, how does this? I know how this works. Like I don't.
It's not like putting your fingers on the confusion valve.
Let's put it this way: that saying is a saying that says that is like you could apply to anything for this guy. In other words, are women as capable as men? No, because when they're not scratching their ball, it's like one of those.
Yes.
But I just don't like. It would have been interesting to have Brewster say, getting back to the scratching the balls thing. How does that convey competence in your mind?
Yeah. Well, maybe he just wanted to move away and definitely did not want to shake his hand because he doesn't know where it's been.
Exactly. I got news for you. If I walk into any type of establishment, business establishment, and the person who greets me is scratching their balls, I'm not thinking this is the competent one.
Run for president, sir.
I have something very sensitive I need you to take care of. And I am really... You strike me as someone who knows what they're doing, sir.
You just exude authority.
There's so many places we could go.
With
this.
But perhaps we shouldn't. But
probably best that we don't. Because it's not inconceivable that you could walk into a place and a person without balls is scratching that area.
Yeah.
And
How would you know?
Well, you don't necessarily know, but maybe you just like, if anybody's scratching any part of their groin, then you're like, competence.
He's close to the truth.
Are you scratching?
He's over the target.
Are you scratching or are you just wiggling? You're like, what are you doing there?
Sorry, I'm over the target.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I've turned the phones on. It's called the stink palm, Sam. Great way best your Oh, gosh. We got to this a little bit earlier than we wanted to in the show, I suspect.
We still got an hour.
Yep. All right. Voicemail is off. 646-257-3920 is the phone number. Let's read a couple IMs. Dizzle McFizzle. Good morning, fellow settlers. Left is best. Slur MP. Buy the seeds with your monthly nut. Okay. A lot of callbacks from yesterday. Emma, your Twitter account has essentially completely disappeared from me unless I search you out directly. Musk is definitely giving you the Taibbi treatment. Censorship much?
I've heard that from a few people, and also, but I think it started right after the Tim Pool thing when Elon responded directly to that video of the T-Post millennial.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I was confused, and then I think I reached out to Binder, and I was like, do you have any thoughts on this? And that was kind of like what I think it was talking to Binder or Matt Leck, I forget. Like that's kind of what we pinned it down to, but I'm not gonna bitch about it, unlike some people.
Well, speaking of some people, I mean, this happened the other day, and it is it's an outrage, and here it is. This is clip number 16. Apparently, things have gotten really, really bad between Elon and Brett Weinstein.
Oh, no.
And here it is. Brett writes on Twitter or X, Elon uses X to shape the world. His tweets matter. When Musk blocks you, you can't see important information readily available to others, not even when quoted by a friend. This amounts to a brave new kind of censorship targeted at particular members of the audience. So, it's interesting because I'm quite sure that Brett Weinstein knows that Dave Rubin blocked me, and I was left out of Dave Rubin shaping the world.
Me too. Same with me and Candace Owens.
And he's saying, and now Brett goes back and says, I'm not saying it's Musk's intent. This is his way of basically.
It's not Musk's intent with the company he owns when he presses the block button. It couldn't be.
No. Like this is the thing is that you hear, this is like the Brett Weinstein, like This is the, when the apes do this thing, they do this and they say to the king ape, like, I'm being dutiful. This is Brett's version of that. So he says, like, a horrific, horrible act has been done to me.
Yeah.
I am now in the margins of society because I don't see what Elon Musk tweets.
This is what the founders warned about.
I will say to Brett Weinstein, like, dude, we're here together because I don't follow Musk. Now, of course, I have the option of following and I can see what he's tweeting.
Well, it's often at the top of the algorithm.
I don't, but somehow I think I kept
coincidentally
hitting, like, not necessary for me to see. But he says, like, this has been a horrible thing that's been done to me. But then he turns around and goes, now, I'm sure Elon doesn't realize he's done this. Maybe he realizes he's blocked me, but he doesn't realize how deeply it has hurt me. And I won't be able to see things like, in coming weeks, Grok will summarize these mammoth laws before they're passed by Congress, so you know their real purposes. You know what I would never, ever, ever do is trust Grok to summarize legislation for me.
I'm curious about, what Grok is taking in and for what purpose, because there's really not a ton of
there's nothing
clarity.
Like I want my information from a completely hands-on owner of this platform who also incidentally is like deciding whether he's going to give Donald Trump $1 billion.
Oh yeah. And meanwhile, by the way, Elon Musk is suing OpenAI, and they just leaked a bunch of his emails because they're like, I assume Grok is his attempt to compete with OpenAI, but I doubt that that's going to have the same effect. Brett, like, blocking is not a free speech violation, Brett. I mean, I don't.
No, it's not free speech. It is
censorship.
It is a censorship.
Yeah.
That is in a brave new world. We have entered into a new era where I am.
When girls don't respond to texts, is that censorship?
It is a brave new era of blocking me out of parts of the world.
Oh, sorry to the dissident Brett.
Chris Serda. Hey, Sam and comrades, can I get a shofar for my 33rd birthday? Thank you all. Left his best. Happy 33rd. Larry Bird's number for the rest of my life. That's what I will associate with that number. Golden Oyster Cult. For those looking to purchase large amounts of cedar seeds, does it come in buckets? Well done. El Conniption. I can't believe Senator Simina got us to clean water and the voters are throwing her out for it. Smug liberal leftist telling me to wash my bedding. Ryan and Callie. Hey, I just won Menendez charges. Bingo. Where's my surreptitious gold bar prize? The good liars have started a podcast. Maybe it's a good time to have them on Casual Friday. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Dave the Apprentice. Silo Sibin. Thank you. Ma'am, what makes you think that Trump was bad? Q thought bubble. Ribbidibaboo. Sad. I don't know what that means. Number 13. My understanding is that Garvey didn't spend any money campaigning and Schiff spent more money on advertising for him than Schiff spent on himself. This dude is going to be an issue. I'll admit this is it. Well, look, the strategy of elevating the opponent you want is not a bad, or the tactic, I should say, is not a bad tactic. I have, frankly, more issues with all the Democratic establishment putting their thumb on the scales in supporting Schiff than I do with Schiff, like, elevating Garvey. I mean, this is I want someone. The issue I have with Schiff is not his tactics. It's what he employs them for.
Yeah.
Like, I would love someone who had, Barbara Lee's politics or some combination of Barbara Lee and Katie Porter's politics who was able to employ such tactics. It's his policies and his ideology. Now he's moved, at least rhetorically, to the left considerably since he's got into office, but still, not my choice. But yeah, it's smart politics. He wants to win.
It was incredibly effective. I mean, this is separate because California is so blue. It doesn't necessarily matter in the same way, but the Democrats in 2022 were like basically lights out with this tactic of elevating the election deniers and the most crazies, whether it be, how Shapiro won in Pennsylvania,
against Mastriano,
against Mastriano,
Masters in Arizona,
against Carrie Lake, the guy in Doug, what's his name?
Well, so Masters in the Senate against Mark Kelly, and then Lake against Katie Hobbs in the gubernatorial race,
Yes.
and then Don Bolduc in New Hampshire against Maggie Hassan in New Hampshire.
I mean, it's a good tactic. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work. I give you Donald Trump, but broadly speaking, it's a good tactic if it works. Alien Machine. I wasn't able to listen yesterday because I was enjoying being one step closer to 30. Can I get a 29th birthday shofar? You got it.
God.
Dave the Apprentice. Sam, you spent like 10 minutes on Monday laughing at Trump flubbing with rhythm, keeping in his speech. Yeah, I know, but I didn't spell it out. I didn't literally try and spell it out. Rubba-da-ba-da. That's...
he moans at the end a little bit too, which is funny. A beep-beep-doo or something.
Tomolo Fink, a happy Friends Day Wednesday, folks. Here in Britain, the Chancellor, which is essentially the finance minister, has unveiled his budget for the upcoming new financial year. Thatcherism all around. Also, one of the things that got Afrikaners to rethink apartheid was South Africa being excluded from the first Rugby World Cup, which was the 1987 men's tournament. Rugby has long been the most popular sport amongst Afrikaners. Anyway, I hear basketball is very popular in Israel. Indeed. Amazon Union Thug for Life. Good afternoon, MR crew. Free Palestine. Jono Liva loves horses. I want some of that cedar seed and will help produce more seed. Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Dan from Columbus. Every time Sam gets Cinema's name wrong, I think of that scene from The Other Guys. You say my wife's name right. I don't know that movie.
It's actually an underrated movie. That bit is Will Ferrell is married to Eva Mendes, and it makes no sense, and she's very attractive. Right. That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, but the scene that I was talking about is how they go to that Brett Gelman's house, and his wife's name is Christineth with an ETH at the end, and not Christine.
Right.
So
Brett
he says,
Gelman.
You say my wife's name right.
Israel's favorite comedian.
I can't watch Brett Gelman anymore. He's
Speaking
ruined it for me.
Well, I mean, he always plays an asshole in movies, and so
definitely in Fleabag.
Yeah.
It's ruined it for me, though. Anyways, hey, this might be one of the rare occasions, and probably will be. It may even be the last time I ever do it. It may be the first time I play a clip, at least one that is not about mocking or anything else, of Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Oh, wow.
She, yesterday we briefly touched on this. There is a government shutdown that is happening, or may happen, I think by Friday. A partial one. There are two tranches, essentially, of like government funding that is on the table. There is a bill in the House that it looks like Mike Johnson has basically come to the other Jesus on this, I guess, and realizing like he's going to have to pass it with Democratic votes in addition to Republican ones, because nobody seems to want a government shutdown. And even if they get the government shutdown, there doesn't seem to be any way to appease the so-called conservatives in the Freedom Caucus who don't want government to even function at all.
And they'll be up in arms when he gets Democratic votes on this.
Yeah, so he's damned if he does, he damns if he doesn't, and he wants to keep his job because now he can open a bank account. But there's a second tranche, and part of that second tranche is the Department of Justice funding. And David Dayen had a piece on this the other day, and now a bicameral group, bipartisan group, 5 lawmakers, not a huge group, but it is a group, are demanding that $45 million that are being cut from the budget, from the Department of Justice Antitrust Division, be reinstated. Here is Amy Klobuchar raising this on the Senate floor. And, listen to what she says.
For each agency. For fiscal year 2024, the CBO estimated that the Department of Justice Antitrust Division would earn $278 million under the bill, an increase of $88 million from a year prior. Yet the budget released this week appropriated only $233 million to the Antitrust Division.
All right, pause it for one second. The point is that there has been legislation, she'll mention this, but there's been legislation in the past that says the Department of Justice Antitrust Division can collect fees. It can be self-funding in some, not totally, but it can add to its funding by collecting fees. So in other words, the more enforcement you have,
right,
the more enforcement you will get.
Yep.
Go ahead.
From a year prior. Yet the budget released this week appropriated only $233 million to the Antitrust Division. That's an estimated $45 million in fees that were diverted away from antitrust enforcers. But that's not all. The appropriation reverses decades of precedent, 25 years. It said the overage of fees would go to the Antitrust Division. So if they generate the fees, then they get to have those fees to help hire the lawyers to take on the big companies. That's how it's always worked. One pen, and they changed it. We weren't able to see it ahead of time. We worked with them after some language came out in July. Unbeknownst to us, they just took the money and ran. They took the money and they put it in other parts of the government budget. This appropriation, as I said, reverses how this has been done. So let's just get this straight. Senator Grassley and I changed the law with 88 votes to get more money into that division. And instead, going forward, they're not going to get any of the money. So it almost makes it ridiculous that we tried to help by passing the law, because if we hadn't done anything, then maybe no one would have noticed it, and then the Appropriations Committee wouldn't have taken the money. When Congress acts to increase merger fees or makes a policy decision, I think the Appropriations Committee's job is then to follow that policy decision. The CBO predicts an...
I mean, is that legal? How is that legal for them to be able to just take the funds that were appropriated and then put it somewhere else than it was actually written out in the language?
I can only imagine that maybe the legislation for the spending ends up superseding that prior legislation. I don't know.
Either way, though, I mean, look, it hasn't been signed into law at this point. But the idea that they can come to some sort of agreement and just put the money elsewhere. Are they even changing the language in their version of the bill?
We'll see. I mean, it's an appropriation. So it is, it's not necessarily, they may be able to collect the fees and maybe the cut comes from somewhere else. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's like a loophole of almost a reallocation looking like a spending cut. So they've sort of like said, oh, we cut something to the EPA, but that is a cut from like, some sort of discretionary spending, whereas it would be then offset by like a Inflation Reduction Act or bipartisan infrastructure bill offset of other separate money. So
gotcha.
I think it might be some sleight of hand stuff to advertise it like that, but I think they can sort of, if they can get it by the parliamentarian, I think they will. Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see if hopefully that the antitrust stuff is one of the highlights of this administration.
Yeah,
and what's happening. So
and she's a lawyer. I mean, Amy Klobuchar, before she was a senator, was county prosecutor in Minnesota. So. I'm sure she's passionate about like the DOJ actually getting funded in this way.
Sleepy Dave in St. Louis, I'm going to assume. Hey, is this the correct place to send IMs to the show? It is. We're reading it right now. I became a member a few months ago and just want to make sure I'm doing it right. You are doing it right. In fact, you get one of these. How's that?
Charge.
If so, could you all elaborate on why the March on Washington with Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert was not a good thing? I just don't know much about it other than my uncle went and said Cat Stevens played a song. Okay, first off, it's not the March on Washington.
Yeah, it was
You
the.
should not confuse that with.
When he said Jon
March.
Stewart, I really did a double take.
It was the rally to restore
Rally to restore
sanity.
yeah.
The March
And it
on
wasn't
Washington.
Colbert. It was just Stewart. I mean, Colbert was there, but it was
yeah.
Stewart's project.
Yeah.
And Colbert probably, I don't know what he thought about it.
I remember them in matching outfits speaking at that thing.
I have no doubt that Colbert was there and supportive of it, but I also don't think the dynamic was such that Colbert wasn't going to do with
Right.
Jon Stewart. But why was it bad? Because it I don't want to say it depoliticized people, but it almost as if that was the intent. The idea was, let's not argue that. It almost was saying, don't take politics so seriously. That instead of let's not be shrill about this. And certainly during the Bush years, and I would argue maybe, at all times, but certainly it was basically saying, everybody just calm down. It's not that big of a deal. We were killing hundreds of thousands of people, incidentally, in Iraq during this time. Jon Stewart's show was developed as a critique of the media. And it was, I think, a critique that is a little bit anachronistic now, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, that's what it was decent at. But when his analysis of politics, and I think he's gotten better in some respects, to be honest, in the last couple of years. I don't think he's doing great, but it's better. But his assessment of politics in general was like, why is everybody getting so engaged? And so the idea of restoring sanity was not some type of branding as to how can we get this nascent authoritarian theocratic party out of the way, which is what it should have been, because he wasn't seeing where this was going. That's what it should have been. But instead it was like, hey, if you have friends who are so into saying that Bush should be impeached or is a war criminal,
Yeah.
calm down, everybody. That's what the sort of was.
That's what it was like. Yeah. I mean, he got a lot of praise for his Israel-Palestine segment recently, but I thought it was pretty weak, honestly. I mean, look, it's interesting because that you had that reaction, right, in Iraq wartime. I feel like there was a bit of both sidesing on the Stewart segment, but at least he covered it. I actually think that John Oliver's been better on Israel-Palestine than Stewart.
But his show has always been much more overtly political, and even Colbert's was more political.
Yeah.
Of course, Colbert was able to do it in the context of a character.
Yeah.
So maybe, but
I like.
I mean, listen, Colbert's politics are, I think, even probably significantly more to the left than he presents on television.
I'm sure that's the case.
Having known him prior to those days, he was very much into the Catholic social justice movement and what is Dorothy? Not Dorothy Day. Dorothy Day, is it?
I just think there's also just millennials like myself. There's a total nostalgia about Jon Stewart that definitely permeates things because this was really before the internet was really taking off, before alternative media was taking off, and for me, right, I got into politics as purely in opposition to the Iraq War. That's my first beginning memories of why I even cared. And so that's why Jon Stewart was important, at least for kids like myself. But it's a little antique, right? Because there's been such a preponderance of alternative media saying things a little bit more clearly.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 336 area code. Is that an area code?
Hello?
Hello, 336. You're on the phone.
Hey.
What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Snyder from Salem.
Spider?
Snyder.
Oh, Snyder.
Snyder?
The guy you played in that one movie you were in?
Yes, Snyder. I was in actually multiple movies, but that's okay. But yes,
Right.
Snyder, yes.
Yeah, I've been listening since I was about 15. It's my first time calling.
Wow. How old are you now?
I'm 19.
All right, sweet.
I voted in my first election yesterday, North Carolina primary.
Nice.
Lord mercy. Sorry, I'm very nervous.
No, you're
doing
all
great.
good.
First, just wanted to say that I really appreciate the work you do. You're really entertaining and informative, and you've helped me learn to debate a little better. In fact, over Christmas break, I had an argument with my Baptist minister cousin-in-law in which I cribbed pretty much wholesale all of Emma's talking points from that Tim Pool debate. So sorry.
Okay,
Sweet.
well, that's which ones?
That's why she did it.
Yes.
The one we were talking about, like gay stuff in school or whatever. All that. That's not my bag, buddy. I thought that was a really funny line. I
Trying
was
to be
probably a
extra
little rude.
condescending. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No,
Well,
it was purposeful. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, appreciate you for that. I have sort of a two-part thing to talk about. So y'all did, I missed the show yesterday for work, but y'all did a video yesterday talking about Mark Robinson. Obviously, he is fixing to be a big contender for governor of my state. And first, I wanted to sort of relate why he worries me in particular. I mean, apart from the, abhorrent shit he says. And I wanted to ask sort of a more strategic question. So, Mark Robinson, I've been looking at polling between him and the guy who's fixing to be, or I think is Democratic nominee now, Josh Stein.
Yep.
This is the first time in a while that it looks like a GOP governor might have a decent shot. All of the state-level offices in North Carolina have slowly gotten more red since I think Bev Perdue left in 2008. Pretty much everything has tended towards red. In 2008, we had a blue attorney general, a blue state legislature, and now pretty much everything's gone red. Governor is the last thing to go, in part because, and this may interest you, Emma, back when the first wave of sort of trans bills was going on in North Carolina, HB2 was a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as backlash to that, the ACC pulled the basketball championship games out of Charlotte. And I always say, I think that is the only thing that got North Carolina to vote blue for the governor, because Pat McCrory had so thoroughly ruined his reputation.
Interesting. It's possible.
So HB2 was cited, at least by smart people, at least, as a big factor as to why Pat McCrory lost in 2016. But Mark Robinson is looking to be a serious heavyweight this time around, anyway. But anyway, that's just a general observation. I wanted to ask, being that yesterday was my first time casting a ballot, since I started listening to your show, actually, I have moved. I once lived in a pretty large sort of metropolitan area, and now I live in a more rural county, not very far, but I still pretty much live and work in Winston-Salem. But my permanent address is in a pretty much a very thoroughly red county, and that's how North Carolina is, a sort of a state in the South. You have little islands around big cities, Wake County, Gaston, Forsyth, that are all blue. But you have sparsely populated, but still quite politically powerful, thanks to how our legislature works, red counties all around. And as things have gotten worse, I think it was HR 808 that just passed, that one of those banning trans care bills that are becoming pretty common lately. But my question is, I want to know how we can approach sort of making change or changing or motivating voters in these sort of heavily rural areas of the country, and it's pretty obvious why these things kind of happen. I mean, we could go back to conservative talk radio, right? Because AM gets freaking everywhere.
Right.
People who don't have access to the internet as much, but they tune into the radio on the way to their jobs, or whatever. That's how my grandpa got converted. I forget, was that something the FCC, some law in the 80s or whatever that required that there was going to be equal coverage or whatever.
There used to be something called the Fairness Doctrine that under the Reagan administration, the FCC got rid of. And the Fairness Doctrine basically said you can't put on an hour's worth of conservative talk unless you put on an hour's worth of liberal talk. When that went away, you developed Rush Limbaugh became syndicated, and then they did the whole sort of like format purity. And so by the late 80s, you had conservative talk radio that could be packaged, across the country. So that's when that really changed dramatically during that time. That was, an FCC change under Reagan. But so what's the question is like, how do you begin to turn the tide in rural America?
Yeah, because given that, these people, these are a very aging population in these sort of counties, right? I mean, they don't know. You've been on the crusade against sort of the internet right for the last however long. The Tim Pools, the Brett Weinsteins, the Dave Rubins, whoever. But these people don't know who they are.
Yeah, well, you know how I started, though. I mean, being is that we're actually like
that's
20
true, On Air America.
Yeah, 24 days away from the 20th anniversary of the launch of this show, which was on AM Talk Radio. And I had when I started this, my hope was we started this version. Jesus Christ, 13, 14 years ago, that I would get back on radio. And at one point I did for a couple hours, 3 hours a day. And it was sort of a crap show, but, AM Talk Radio, I think, is a great way to reach folks in rural areas. It's the best way in my mind, but that's not happening. You got to divide that question into a couple of different things. What can be done from a communication standpoint? What can be done from a policy standpoint? And also, the trend has been demographically that younger people are moving to cities. And that's why, you will hear some people push back on the idea that gerrymandering has had such as big of an impact as it appears that it does. And it's really been more of a function of, or at least in part, a function of self-sorting with, like-minded people going to cities and non-like-minded people staying in rural areas or whatnot. I also think that, younger people, I think the demographics are going to change. And I think we may even see it in this election where those older people you're talking about are just going to be fewer. And because the boomer generation is a big generation and the millennials and my generation is not, and the millennials are a big generation. And so that shift, when the boomers sort of move out and the millennials sort of move in, is going to be a big shift. We're still going to have that rural urban divide that's everywhere.
Yeah.
In Cuba, Castro would bring in all of the police in Havana were from the countryside, so that they would have this sort of chauvinism against, the people in the city, so that, that Castro could make sure that that the police were sort of more aligned with him than they would be necessarily with people in Havana. I mean, broadly speaking, that dynamic exists everywhere in every society, urban versus rural. So it's not going to change tremendously, but radio and a 50 state strategy where you put money into places that you know you're going to lose, but you're building things and you don't know where at one point, something will pop up, but that will be helpful. But I appreciate the call.
That's a fair point, actually. Oh, sorry.
Appreciate.
All right, thank you very much.
And we should also say that everybody on the IMs thinks that you're actually, 40 years old, not 19.
I get that a lot, actually. I don't know why.
Well, you're well spoken.
Old soul.
Well spoken.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate the question. Thanks.
No problem. Bye.
Kowalski, tell that caller, who is very well spoken, that he should get as many friends of his that are like-minded in that area to join the Republican Party and take over the county committee. Talk about sewer socialism. Don't bring up race or religion or anything. Just talk about improving the infrastructure of the local community. A high-speed internet, housing to keep young people, things like that. That's what Kowalski's been up to. Ooh, breaking news. Dean Phillips has just dropped out of the Democratic primary.
One of the more useless runs I've in recent memory for president. Like, what does he even stand for except I'm Biden but young?
In 2011, I hosted then VP Biden at my home. Let's just stop there. Excuse me?
So why was he at your home? Just dropping in?
He entered Congress 7 years later, if I'm not mistaken.
The point being that I was incredibly rich.
Yeah, and I was, Biden wasn't showing up for a potluck.
All right, sorry, let's get back on. In 2011, I hosted the then VP Biden at my home. Most notable was his empathy and kindness to my daughters and the catering staff, with whom he had sat and had ice cream. Surprise, surprise. His decency and his wisdom were rarities in politics then, even more so today.
Why were you running that?
Keep that down just a little bit, please. Let me control it more. Over a decade later, the only thing that has changed is time, which slows us down all a little bit. Including presidents. I ran for Congress in 2018 to resist Donald Trump. I was trapped in the Capitol in 2021 because of Donald Trump, and I ran for president in 2024 to resist Donald Trump again because Americans were demanding an alternative, and democracy demands options. But it's clear that the alternative is not me. It's clear that Joe Biden is our candidate and our opportunity to demonstrate what type of country America is and intends to be. To all who supported my effort, thank you. We will continue the important work to ensure more responsive, energizing, and man of decency. Let's lead with invitation, not confrontation, to welcome Haley's supporters, Trump supporters, and uncommitted supporters to get this done. It's our calling, our legacy, and our time. Onward with joy and patriotism. I mean, not a bad statement.
Why did you run? What did he stand for? What was different about him than Joe Biden? I still have yet to hear a real explanation.
I mean, I don't even know if his politics are as good as, I don't really know his politics that well, because his pitch was, I'm younger than Joe Biden.
He also tacked to the left, I think, a little bit just to try to set himself aside. Like, he kind of embraced Medicare for all more when he didn't in Congress, and
that was like so cynical, though. No one bought that.
Yeah, it was. But also, someone arguably, I would say, maybe not. It would be a matter of degree that he was less pro-Israel than Joe Biden.
Well, it's hard to.
But the the theory that a younger a version of Joe Biden would, on paper, one would expect to have them to done better.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it just never caught fire with anybody. Now, maybe that was because there was no debates. I watched one debate with Phillips and Williamson, and it was literally like almost impossible to watch. Like, the sound fell apart. The whole thing was like shot like it was like a live stream from like 2007. it's I don't know what else to say. I mean, the guy's dropping out. Good for him. It was largely irrelevant. It was an embarrassment for him. If anything, there's a couple of different types of hubris. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't have been someone running against Joe Biden.
Yeah.
But you should do it around one issue, because it's very difficult to beat an incumbent president, period, in a primary. It just, all elections favor the incumbent. And if you're going to run against it, you should run a message campaign. The idea that Dean Phillips thought that he was going to, be a replacement for Joe Biden is absurd. He didn't run on anything other than like, I'm not as old as Joe Biden.
Yeah. And if October 7th had happened earlier and what was happening in Gaza, the genocide, had started earlier, there could have been an opportunity for an issue candidate on that very issue. Or on climate change, there could have been somebody. But with the backing of these climate groups or, Arab American groups in this instance or something like that, because I'm so uninterested in candidates that are on islands. Like, it's unserious to me if you don't have endorsements from groups that I consider to be like, okay, this is some actual infrastructure here as opposed to a celebrity candidacy, then it's pretty unserious in my view, because like that's the kind of stuff that you need to win power.
What's interesting is, and we've talked about this, and I don't know that we'll talk about it much, but one of the biggest environmental unilateral decisions took place a month ago in this country and got no attention whatsoever.
Yeah.
We had Bill McKibben on about a month, maybe a little more than a month ago, on to talk about it. He was prepared to go down with about a dozen other people to get arrested at the White House. The White House made the right decision on this. They essentially put off the permitting for a massive for a permit for a massive liquid natural gas export facility, which permitting that would have basically had billions of dollars rushing in to invest in liquid natural gas for 50 years out. Bill McKibben says it was as big of a decision, if not bigger, than the Willow Project and Keystone XL, in terms of deterring the future of fossil fuel power, and it got very little attention because Joe Biden is stepping on his own sort of like feet with doing this. So with what's going on in Gaza. Colleen from Connecticut, is the strategy to stop the undecided vote to end the primary today? But you can't end the primary today.
You can't.
And in fact,
has to vote.
The irony is that Phillips leaving the race is probably going to add a little bit to the uncommitted vote. And that's going to become more of the story.
Marianne should drop out for that reason, or re-drop out. But yeah, it you can't end it. It's I think the Biden administration would like for it to end. It's only just gaining momentum at this point.
Yep.
And the convention is going to be there's going to be a real fight at the convention about this kind of stuff, and there will be demonstrations.
Without a doubt. I don't think you're going to see anything more about Kirsten Sinema, whatever, however she.
It's irrelevant now.
Yes, but let's just say adieu or goodbye to her.
Good riddance.
Here is the Five crew: Dana Perino, Bill Hemmer filling in on the Five.
These are the news people, right? It's right? They're the more newsy, respectable.
Perino is Hemmer is
Hemmer,
supposedly.
right.
And here they are talking about Kirsten Sinema, who, when you think of bravery, Kirsten Sinema is that.
would be a waste of time. He said that yesterday on our show. Democrats want to run on Trump is trying to destroy our institutions and our democracy. Well, they are actually saying, let's just blow up all the institutions and the democracy. And remember that Senator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona very bravely, courageously saved the filibuster in the Senate. And how did she pay for it? The Democrats ran her out of town. She announced today she will not run for re-election. There won't be a three-way race in Arizona. That probably makes Jessica Tarlov very happy as she sits there and smiles over there, because it gives the Democrats maybe a better chance of winning that seat if they split the vote.
Jesse, there are 3 liberal justices.
You stupid liberal.
Okay.
Jessica.
Just so that we're clear, the idea of democracy is that your vote and your representatives reflect what you want, and you can participate in the governance more, and that there is as little friction as possible between the will of the people and what happens by lawmakers, except for, of course, we want to protect the minority from the tyranny of the majority.
Mm-hmm.
And by the minority, we're talking about people. We don't want people to be excluded. We don't want fascism in that regard. But in terms of democracy, one of the most anti-democratic institutions that we could possibly have has been the U.S. Senate.
Because of the filibuster.
Well, not just because of the filibuster. It was set up that you couldn't even vote for your senator.
Yeah.
You would vote for people who would vote for your senator or appoint your senator, essentially. And we had an amendment to democratize the Senate more. And then the Senate was like, well, how do we keep the riffraff from controlling what we do? This is our House of Lords, ladies and gentlemen. And the way they came up with that was, we're going to use a filibuster. We're going to make something up that's not a law. That's just a gentleman's agreement. And by gentlemen, I am not being euphemistic.
Yes.
Saying it was made amongst gentlemen only because they're the ones who can represent, if you can't scratch your balls, you're scratching your head.
Oh,
and
gosh.
That's
Good reference.
Yes, thank you. And they came up with this idea. It's used basically to prevent civil rights legislation from moving forward for a long time, that you need 2/3 of the Senate, 66 out of 100, to allow a thing to be brought to a vote. There has been some change, some more democratic, small d, reforms. Now it's down to 60. But the point being that there's nothing democratic about the filibuster. It is a way to obscure what people in power are doing or want to do, or genuinely whether they're carrying out their mandates. There is no reason that the Senate can't operate like the House, insofar as if there is a majority of people who have been elected to the Senate, they will get to vote on it. And remember that there's about maybe it's 20 to 40 million difference in terms of votes that are represented by red states in the Senate than in the blue states, even if it's 50-50. Because if you're from a state like Wyoming that has less than 1 million people? I mean, how many people are in Wyoming?
I think it's less than 1 million.
You get the same amount of votes.
600,000, actually.
Yeah, you get the same amount of votes in a Senate as people who come from New York, where there's millions upon millions of people just living in New York City.
Yeah, back when the Senate was 50-50, right?
40 million more
40
people
million
voted for
more
Democratic lawmakers
than the equal number of Republican ones in 50. Yeah, and was she trying to say at the beginning there that it's the Democrats that are trying to undo our institution?
Well, that was the undo of the institution.
This institution, right? But not like the system of checks and balances that like is actually enshrined in the Constitution, or our Department of Justice, or all of the things that Donald Trump is trying to do, where he admitted to Sean Hannity he wants to be a dictator on day one when Hannity threw up a softball saying, "You're not a dictator, right?" The Democrats are the ones trying to undo our institutions. Biden is an institutionalist by like every single metric available.
She was part of an administration who attempted to, I mean, aside from the torture, they attempted to, or in fact they did, fire a lot of U.S. attorneys who are basically the representatives of the DOJ in the states, operating within the states, who were not finding sufficient numbers of voter fraud so that they could impose voting restrictions on people. And the U.S. attorneys are coming back like, well, I'm sorry, we just don't have any. And if they didn't drum up cases, they were then fired.
Is that how Chris Christie got his job in New
Chris
Jersey?
Christie was one of the U.S. attorneys who was happily doing work for the Bush administration in that regard. But in particular, he was framing a lot of, or bringing, let's say,
Muslim people?
Yes. He was prosecuting a lot of Muslim people for being Muslim, and Google Fort Dix 5, and people will have more information on that.
And Trump then at the same time was going on radio shows and saying all these Muslim people are celebrating when the Twin Towers fell. But apparently Trump is such a massive shift in the Republican Party. It was so different than the rest of the institutions in the Republican Party up to this point. Yeah, give me a break.
For that rural North Carolina caller, check out the Majority Report's September 29th, 2022 interview with rural progressives who wrote the book Dirt Road Revival about how to build rural politics. And in North Carolina, there's an organization Down Home North Carolina, which is run by poor and working families focused on small town and rural communities. It says Rural Lefty. That is September 29th, 2022 interview with rural progressives. And then Down Home, North Carolina. All right, final call of the day. Calling from a 407? 407 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, it's Michael in Miami. How are you?
Michael in Miami. This is a different Michael in Miami.
Right.
Yes.
All right, so Michael in Miami,
How's
too.
everyone?
We're doing all right.
Yes.
Doing all right.
I don't want
you
to
know.
upset original Michael in Miami.
And Uncommitted's given us a little bit of hope, I think. A little bit of life.
Yes.
What's on your
A little
mind?
background, guys. Yeah, so, I'm 34. I was born in 1990. And Sam, I 90s kid with an older brother, so loved comedy and familiar Gary Busey show, things like that. So when I found your show around 2016, that was great. I was in the workforce and really I'm an attorney with 2 young kids. So, navigating capitalism and my integrity and trying to provide for my family while also not trying to exploit people. It's a good service you do. So I just wanted to thank you for all that.
Thank you.
And, just for my question, I actually saw Emma's former colleague, Anna, on I think it's the Iced Coffee podcast. Did you guys get a chance to watch that?
I've never heard of it, and I don't even know. No,
Yeah.
I haven't watched it. I have never even heard of that show. Who hosts that show?
I don't know, but it was interesting just from the perspective. I mean, I don't know these two guys, and Sam.
I drink iced coffee.
You would have fun.
I do too.
Yeah, you would have fun. You would have fun watching it just because their follow-ups were pretty funny in terms of how little they follow this stuff. But I thought it was a really, really good conversation of just in terms of someone in their mid-30s. I came of age 9/11 in middle school to Iraq War to my college applications about that, and coming of age now with where the obviously the politics are and the left and Anna's position and her experience the past few years with that. And I just overall was just curious as 2028 comes, 2032 comes, that Democratic primary stage is going to look a lot different. There's more than likely you'll see AOC and those of that type pushing back against Bashir of Kentucky and more corporate centrists, right? And I just wanted to get an idea, with what your show, what you guys are doing, how can you think the left can better coalesce, this millennial 30-somethings that are, and the studies are coming out economically are making more money than what everyone thought. You know, the articles from 2008 recession of millennials on the couch ordering iced coffees and all that, that's not the case, right? The data, New York Times had a great analysis about babies born in 90 and 91 and all that. It just came out last week. Recommend people read it. But, I was curious with what you've been doing, Sam, all these years, where this thing goes. Past,
where what thing
Biden,
goes? Like left media or the left in 2028 for the president?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just pursuing meaningful, whether you want to call it progressive, I just think, pillars of dignity, housing, healthcare, things like that.
Gosh.
That messaging those themes, like the things you talk about, what's that going to look like, and what can be done to, have less corporate, effects in the party, and really, Bernie was so close those two cycles to get it over the edge. Like, ultimately what that would look like.
Well, I mean, I think there has to be the answer to that question is really more or less timeless. I mean, more people need to get involved on a local level. More people need to get involved in their sort of like their party politics and take over the party. But I really do think that if we can manage to get by, with our government intact over the next 10 years. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and in each election, I would say in most of the presidential elections, I've thought like this is one of the most important one we've had, and I think it's even believing that is not necessarily dispositive, because each election can be more problematic and have more implications as you go. I really felt like the 2004 election. I mean, part of the reason why I stopped, the last thing I did close to it was directing that Busey show. And part of the reason why I thought I was doing this for 6 months, essentially, in the run up to the 2004 election, because I did think that it was really, that we would be on a trajectory if Bush won that second term, that would be highly problematic. And I think that prediction is still live, frankly. Yeah. But if Trump gets into office, the destruction of the apparatus of our government, the stuff that like touches
state,
the administrative state is, I think, really in play in a way that that a Jeb Bush would. I mean, they would have degraded certain areas, but broadly speaking, But I think that the agenda of the Trump people would be to really, really disassemble the administrative state.
Arbitrary destruction.
And I think that, like, when you are my age, 20 years out or so, if we still have the tools of a government, that the people in charge of it are going to be a lot more progressive, a lot more, maybe in many respects to the left of like what we call progressive today. That's my guess, but I don't know. But I think like this is a big hump that we're going to have to get over. And I really hope that, this time next year, we're talking about how we're, protesting the Biden administration and giving them, making their jobs as difficult as possible, unless they're pursuing a more aggressive, left of center agenda.
I mean, Michael, you saw that reflected before Biden. Biden Zionism became a massive problem. Even Biden was approaching things from a very different angle than Obama did, from the antitrust stuff. And you just see it reflected in J.B. Pritzker's like saying no money for the White Sox stadium because billionaires can fund this on their own. And like Walls, who we just played in Minnesota, is putting free school lunches into programs. And Gretchen Whitmer is like doing more progressive things, and these are kind of standardy Democrats, I think, from like a they're not members of the DSA, right? And even
that's an excellent point, Emma.
Yeah,
and those are the people I've been following and appreciate living in Florida my whole life, right? Seeing what this
and those people
evaporated into.
If you were to transport if you were to transport that ilk of Democrat 15 years ago, they would be you would have a hard time distinguishing them from you know where Republicans were 15 years ago.
Totally. So and the point they're hitting the same fundraisers. They're the same type of Democrats that get the money. But absolutely right. Sorry to
like
cut you off,
Pritzker's very wealthy, and those are his politics, right? So my point is just it's already changed. Biden's just uniquely ill-suited for this moment, like uniquely wrong for this moment, right? So that's the even Kamala Harris is freaked out. She's leaking to the press. I don't own this, right? So it's all changed in front of his eyes. Yeah. And I think it's a more durable change because of who's saying this stuff. Those governors, many of those governors will be running in 2028, by the way, than it was when just Bernie got the base to swallow these ideas and incorporate them. There are more standard Democrats with power who are moving in that direction. So I am more actually positive once Biden is out of office, and I hope he gets a second term for the reasons.
That's why I asked.
Yeah,
about 2028, because I rub shoulders in that world, right? Between my upper middle class upbringing in Orlando with a lot of country club Republican dads and families to, me as lifelong Democrat interned on the Hill in 2010, all that fun stuff. But now, doing the fundraisers for the firm for Democrats, but, that apparatus more than the, more progressive working class apparatus. But seeing the cocktail parties and the fundraisers and then the people getting that money and still doing the Minnesota legislative agenda, still doing the Pritzker, policies, it's optimistic, right? I think it's a broad swath of.
If we can get past the next year, I mean, I think at least there is a canvas.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Appreciate the call.
Yes, thanks, Sam. Appreciate the show, guys. Keep it up.
Thank you, Michael.
I mean, the worst part about the Trump years was, in addition to like the sort of the damage due to the government, is like you can't move forward. It's a rear guard action. All right, wait. Let me just take this call because I think I recognize it, and we haven't heard from them in a long time. And I just 2 minutes. Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam.
Mindy, I had a feeling it was you.
And you only give me 2 minutes.
No, we'll give you more. We'll give you more.
3 minutes.
Congratulations on being engaged.
Oh, thanks, Mindy. It's good to hear from you because we had an IMer say, "Where's Mindy been?"
I know. I listen. I want you to know I do listen every day. I'm old. I'm going to be 65 this year. I'm tired and
Wait. What? How old are you?
I'm going to be 65.
Oh, 65.
I'll be 65 in May.
Okay. All right.
And I have grandchildren now, and one of my kids is moving to Michigan, to a really progressive area, by the way, which I'm really excited about. But in Birmingham, Michigan.
Uh-huh.
Do you know that area, Sam?
I don't. I mean, I knew sort of like a little bit outside of Ann Arbor, like Ipsatucky and all that. But
yeah, well, that's where they met, in Ann Arbor. But anyway, I wanted to call. I'm really nervous about Trump winning. I mean, from the world that I live in, the people that I know, like the young people, the children, and the adults, nobody thinks this authoritative. What was that called? Authoritative? How do you pronounce that?
Authoritarian?
Yeah, authoritarian. Nobody thinks that's a thing. Everybody thinks it's like the abortion thing where it's never going to happen. Like everybody thinks nobody's going to let him do that. Nobody's going to let him do that. Everybody's saying that. And all I hear that's what I hear from the parents. And all I hear from the kids is he's so old. He's so old. Like when I talk to any of the kids, and the kids just think Biden's so old. Like nobody. The message is not getting to anybody outside of the bubble of the people that pay attention, which is a very small group of people that pay attention, correct?
I mean, look, one, I should say it's too early for that message to be out there widely disseminated. But on the other hand, I will also say I don't think that's the most powerful message. And it is hard to argue with the way that Joe Biden comes off. He does come off as he's old.
Cringeworthy. It's like definitely. I mean, I know people that are his age that are more articulate than he is.
Bernie
But
Sanders,
anyway,
for example.
Yes. The guys in all the fruit commercials, the fruit and veggie commercials, those guys are even more articulate.
Exactly right.
But anyway, right? Extremely. But the other thing I want to say is I went to a birthday party. My best friend turned 60, and there was 23 Jewish women at her party. And I got schooled for 10 minutes in the car on the way to the birthday party that I was not to talk about Israel or Gaza to anybody, because every single person in that room was going to have not my opinion on it.
And
so
you're, in other words, you would be seen as a Hamas supporter.
I would be seen as a Hamas supporter, and if I wanted to get the shit beat out of me, I could just go over to my girlfriend's niece, Jen, and she would have punched me in the face.
Yeah.
So it's really bad. I mean, these are women that are like anywhere between 60, mid-70s, all with grandchildren, children, and they have grandchildren. I mean, no, that message is also not getting out, other than the people in the bubble.
Yeah.
It's just their standard. These are standard, like middle class, white upper middle class suburban women that are not getting the message, and the kids are also not getting the message. And like even my husband, who does not listen to this stuff like I do, he doesn't think Trump's going to be able to do one thing to the government. And my husband lives with me. I mean, it's bad. I'm just.
All right. Well, Mindy,
win.
we got to jump, but call in. Call in again and give us an update in 2 months.
Sure.
All
Thanks. Bye, guys. But
Bye.
I do listen every day, so just know that. Bye.
All right.
Glad to
Thanks,
know you're out
Mindy.
there. All right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, ends the phone call portion of our program. And I'll read some IMs and we'll get going here. Dave from Jamaica. I think Biden being old, not so issue as much as his brain is shutting down. Yeah, the age part is, I think, a placeholder for other issues associated with Biden.
Yeah, but I will say, just when you talk to people who are not the most politically engaged, Mindy's right. That's the first thing they'll say.
A pair of socks. Luckily, Americans can't just buy a seat in the Senate like the House of Lords. They basically do, but it's much easier in the UK Parliament. Nice callback to scratching balls, Sam. Thank you. 5 more IM. 6-foot bear just drove through an army of police protecting VP Harris coming into Madison Airport. Is Wisconsin seen as a problem for the campaign already? They're not going to make the mistake that Clinton made in 2016. That's for sure. Snarkorsky. Nobody could have predicted that a mummified senator from the Vietnam era would have been unable to adapt to changing times. Biden and all the other ossified geriatric Democrats keeping an arthritic grip on power is such a problem. If we need an old guy, why couldn't we have nominated Wilford Brimley?
He must not. Is Wilford
you know
Brimley,
do
the
you know this?
actor?
Yeah, Pepperidge Farm. Oh, no, it's not Pepperidge Farm, remembers, is it? No, it's a different guy.
He was in The Fly. And
Yeah.
The Firm.
Not my prediction. Haley voters won't show up, and people who don't want to vote Biden but definitely won't vote Trump won't show up. My prediction is voter turnout will be super low for the general election. Barb MR fan. Yes, Dorothy Day and the Catholic Workers Movement. That was Colbert was into them a little bit back in the day. Not Nick Fuentes. Dean Phillips dropping out. LOL. Trump Biden rematch 2024. Please vote and have a jar full of fingernails and toenails to bite on. Indeed. 2 more. Let's see. John Brown. Sam, you're one of them Hollywood type, a successful voice actor, YouTuber, and writer. We would like you to do your best Beau Biden impression for our AI-generated Angel Beau Biden commercial we're putting on in Morning Joe in a desperate last attempt to get Joe Biden not to drive off an effing cliff. Just say, Papa, please stop the violence in Gaza. You know the pain a parent feels when losing a child, and you could stop this pain. Think of Amy. Now, some of you might say this is mean or cruel. He's complicit in a genocide, so it's fine. We can hurt him emotionally. All right. Mickey 7. I can remember when Dana Perino worked for a Republican president who was elected, even though he received fewer votes than his Democratic opponent. I also remember when she was Bush 43's press secretary, and the White House press corps was astonished when she revealed that she had never heard of the Cuban Missile Crisis. That's true. And the final I am of the day, that's worth digging up that quote. Dan from Missouri. Biden campaign people now are desperately convincing Biden that he needs to scratch his balls during his next speech to appeal to a heartland moderate conservative voter. Bradley, Matt, in absentia, Emma, great job today. Folks, Emma's here tomorrow. See you on, I will see you on Friday, and we will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. Into you while I shifted